Oh no, there's a banner. Make the banner go away. Okay. Do not adjust your streaming screens. You're having a crisis. It is I, Crisis with a K, live from a rather sunny, wintry morning here in New Zealand with the poll list, not from the comic books that are out this week, but the comics from a month ago because we're still catching up. But I do read over half of the comics out in the American digital market, and including all the comics from Marvel, DC, and Image, or at least some opinions on those. But it's not time to get all into that yet, because first we have to talk about my top comic series of 2025 so far. So I read everything. I have my own custom algorithm, and from that algorithm I derive a top 12. No new entrants this week for my regulars, but some things in some different orders than you've seen them before. Let's go. So number 12, we still have Out of Alcatraz, a book from Oni Press that I highly recommend, from Christopher Cantwell and Tyler Cook. At number 11, we still have Ghost Box, a recently concluded series from Mike Carey and Pablo Raimondi from Comixology. At number 10, we have Batman and Detective Comics, written by Tom Taylor. At number 9, moving back a little bit, and we'll talk about the why this week, is Doctor Strange of Asgard, participating in One World Under Doom. And then we have Jump Scare by Cullen Bunn and Danny Luckert, The Avengers from Jed McKay, a rotation of artists, which is possibly why it is not any higher than this. The Tin Can Society from Rick Remender's Giant Generator, written by Peter Warren with art from Francesco Mobley. Solomon Kane moving up a bit, and we do have an issue to talk about this week. It is by Patrick Zurcher, almost all by himself. He had an assist on coloring this week. And then we have, of course, The Nice House by the Sea, a comic book that represents my entire personality and all of its assets. And but then, number 3, we have Batman Dark Patterns. Number 2, we're taking everyone down with us, just a hair behind my favorite comic of 2025 so far, FML by Kelly Sue DeConnick, David Lopez, Chris Peter, and Clayton Cowles. So no big surprises, just a little shuffling. I will say there is one book that was knocking at the door. It's at number 13. It is one of the books that we will talk about this week that you have never heard me talk about before, because I caught up with it this week. But wait, there's more, because we have to talk about my top picks of the week. So the thing is, I am a little behind on posting on Crushing Crisis, but I've been doing all of the writing on Crushing Crisis, and as I write each week of release posts, I say, I wonder what I'll like the best, and then I do the actual reading. Sometimes what I think I will like the best does not turn out to be the actual thing I like the best. So for DC, I thought I would like the best Justice League The Atom Project, number 6. I had a lot of thrill with the previous issue, and I really was looking forward to where this was wrapping up. I have a lot to say about it today, but actually, just by a hair, no DC book this week blew me away, but Absolute Superman number 8 with Rafa Sandoval back on art was definitely my favorite DC book of the week. And then over at Marvel, I assumed it would be Doctor Strange of Asgard, which I love, and I did love, but in an unprecedented move, I just cannot tie-break between these two that were actually my pick. I took them in and out of the presentation, and I said, you know what, I just have to have both. So one is Ghost Rider versus Galactus. What? You'll have to wait in suspense for why. But the other one is Mark Guggenheim's Jedi Knights. They were just both so good, and they both stayed in my head so indelibly that I had to put them both on here. Image, my pick of the week was Kea, and I said, this is the week I'm catching up with Kea, and I'm going to be caught up so I can talk about it on the show. And unsurprisingly, that was my Image pick of the week, which brings us to Indie. I assumed it would be Solomon Kane, or maybe Jump Scare, but probably Solomon Kane, but no, we have a new entrant. This number 1 is one of the best number 1 comic books I have ever read. I would put this number 1 script up there with Kelly Thompson's script for Birds of Prey. It is a book called Something Beyond the Petrichor that we're going to be talking about in the S's today. There's also a free comic book day issue of this. It is from Red 5. Love to see Red 5 back in the action and releasing comics. I've had a lot of favorite, very unusual 4-issue miniseries from Red 5 over the years, and this is just still one of them. So let me just remind everybody, especially if you're new here, welcome, but we have a lot of returning regulars, so I take about 3 or 4 minutes to say hi to everybody in the comments, because I like to know who's watching, and this is a conversation. And then I do a Moment of Krisis, where I just talk extemporaneously for 5 or possibly 10 minutes, and I do think I have a topic today that occurred to me while the hair and makeup team were doing it. But wait, let's have a face reveal, which is when I get to see what the makeup looks like for the first time, because I'm blind. Oh, see, they did an okay job today. This is a little different at points. but I think it looks good. So, having established all that, let us begin to say hello to some folks. And I saw a lot of you chatting just as I was like getting ready to go. So, Super Jop, one of our most regular of regulars, saying, apparently I'm one of your top fans now. YouTube's weird, but YouTube has this whole scoreboard thing now. I don't know. I wind up being on the scoreboard every time I'm on near-mint conditions because I talk too much. But you can't be on the scoreboard on your own channel, I don't think. So that's available for you to be the top fan. Jarn Pauls is stuck under his big damn Sin City omnibus, and I said he should just turn a page at a time until the center of gravity shifts, and that might be the best way to escape that situation. Bunkmaster B, finally we've made it to June, and I know I keep saying there's plans, but the plans were actually enacted last week, and so the plans are now afoot. And so we're going to be moving through June kind of briskly, because not only do I want to get to July new comic books, but I want to talk about the best comic books of the first half of the year. I've seen people putting out their lists. All their lists are wrong. None of them have read over 350 series so far this year. None of them are reading over 50 comic book series a week. So I can tell you none of them have read enough books to give you a top 50. I'm probably the only person on the internet you can trust on that. So that's why we're trying to get to July. And if you were wondering if I was kidding or not in there, sometimes hard to tell with me. Max, I believe this is the pinned comment right here, and I don't know how to unpin actually from here, so it might just be the pinned comment for the whole show. Max's new Beetlebop this week, which is I'll Follow the Sun, one of my favorite Beatles songs of all time. There's just such a sweet way that McCartney sings that one, and I really, really like it. Yeah. Well, I don't want to sing too early because I don't want to get demonetized. I feel like when we bury it later in the show, then it's not as much as a monetization problem, I think. I'm not sure. Okay, let's continue here. So, Logan Wayne saying hello. Edwin Billiot saying hello. Back in California after a 5-day trek across the United States. That's quite a road trip, longer than any road trip I have ever been on. Bunkmaster D be spreading propaganda, lies, rumors, and invectives, saying that I pushed the show back 35 minutes. That did not happen. This is actually the regular time. Maybe you're in a different time zone, because you sometimes are like in Philadelphia and things when I go live. This is the normal time and will be until all of our times change again. Cruel Angel is here, and everybody's talking about how hot it is in the northern hemisphere. Hating Texas summers, but after living in Arizona with what seemed to be like 6-month summers, I can deal with it here, even with humidity versus dry heat. Everybody's wading through the heat. Stoops is here just feeling cool. Jamie C saying hello. Looks like you're going to miss the start of the stream. Lots of stuff going on with work. Yeah, I hear that. Last week, even though I was supposed to be on vacation, also was a lot of stuff going on at work. But we know you'll turn up eventually, Jamie C. James Abel is waiting on tenterhooks for me to begin. Cedric and Ellen, although we learned last week, typically Ellen, I believe, at the driver's seat there, saying hello and hoping everyone is doing all right. One Wheelchair X is here live, and as we all know, One Wheelchair X is the delicious carrot at the end of the stick. Oh, that didn't turn out so well for me, because I am trying to get to the point that I'm caught up enough that I can use a midweek stream to stream with him, and so he shows up every week just to remind me that that is what is driving me, other than also doing my mid-year best of list. Neil Pereira is here saying good morning to everybody, doing well on this chilly Monday morning, because I believe if I remember correctly, he is in Australia. That was my Australian accent. Congratulations, you've heard it. Adrian Montanez is here. Read issues 1 of Out of Alcatraz. Alcatraz is okay issue. So you didn't love it as much as I love it? Because I think that number 1 was really, really good. But we'll get into it. JT White Wolf Library saying, hey, never been happier to be having a crisis live on a Monday morning. Okay, Omnibo here live from Australia. Kevin Cork is here. Anime saying hello to us all. Hello to you, Anime. Saz Murph saying, hi, Crisis. Love that it's wintry by me. Yeah, it never gets truly cold in where I am in New Zealand. It gets down to like 4C, maybe a little colder overnight. But, so like in the low 40s, I really haven't experienced freezing for like 8 years. My body doesn't remember, but as we've established, I have not experienced over 90 degrees for that long as well, and so my body does not remember that. Hello, I am back to nominate Quigley from Something Beyond the Petrichor for Best New Character of 2025. Yes, we will be talking about that, because oh boy, do I love that little turtle. FML is finally back with a new issue this week. All the more reason for me to catch up, because I will not read ahead. Even for things like Imperial, where I knew it was a couple weeks ahead, I stood strong, and I waited until I got there. So, but it is going to be really hard for me to know that there's an issue of FML out there and not get to it. So I really need to catch up as quickly as possible. Lance McNair saying, greetings, Krisis and the Crushers, of whom he counts himself one. I literally just finished Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow and loved it. Is this book included or exempt from my Tom King Dislike Krisis? Included. I could not get through even 2 issues of it. Patrick Borcheld saying hello and good evening to everyone. Lance McNair listening on the road today. Logan Wade, not gonna lie, the hair and makeup team definitely redeemed themselves this week. We're positively glowing. Special shout out to the eyes. Well, let's see what it looks like after I start making my vacuum cleaner noise about halfway through the alphabet, because that's where everything fell apart last week. But I think we learned some new things, and we're always trying new things. As we know, I would love to be a makeup influencer as well as a comic book influencer, but at some point I have to learn how to do eye makeup if we are going to get there. Emmanuel Silvera saying, actually, Women of Tomorrow, that is the abbreviation, those of us in the industry know that WOT is an abbreviation for Woman of Tomorrow, aka Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow by Tom King, and Emmanuel is saying it is an amazing story. Richard Fearing saying hello. Jamie C is having a crisis this week. Random sudden hearing loss. Oh, that is no good. I am so paranoid about my hearing. I get it tested all the time, and because I always had trouble hearing things, and I was in bands that were really loud all the time, and finally, after years of having it tested and being told, like, your hearing is perfect, there's nothing wrong with you, I realized it was actually neurodivergence. But I'm not saying that that's your, we're not doing any medical diagnosis on this channel. I am not licensed for that in New Zealand. Pity my hope things go well, Jamie. Pity Ma saying, hey, Crushers, happy Sunday. Just came back from a mile walk with Blue. He sends apologies. Michael Westlius is here saying hello to everyone. Somehow having a review a few weeks later is also interesting. Well, that's good. The books have gotten time to sink in. You have a better idea if they've made impression. Well, not for me, because I read 64 comic books in the past 24 hours. And I actually started the day before because I had a lot of catch-ups on this week. I caught up on 3 series that I was more than 1 arc behind. So, yikes, that was a lot of reading. Johnny's here, Biff Bam Pow Comic Book Podcast. Hello to you. One Wheelchair X has never been referred to as a carrot before, but he'll take it. See, now we're learning more of the Cedric and Ellen lore. I love when we learn lore of all of you. Like, I know there's Krisis lore, but I actually really a fan of Commenter Crusher lore. So Cedric is the manga fan, and Ellen is the comics fan. I love this. But what are the name of the cats? That's what we need to know. William Lee is here. Kane, my friend from the east coast of the US, and Max Appleman needs to sleep. He's been counting sheep all day. Literally, he was playing a gig on a farm for a sheep shearing ceremony of some kind, and I just kept getting videos where he would show me the video of the stage and like his guitars, and there's a person with this cool like scroll automated player organ, and then every video, every single one I would get, hard pivot, zoom to a sheep. Every single one, like 8, 9, 10 videos, all ending with hard pivot and hard zoom to the sheep. I just want to say hello to a few other folks. AS is here. Buttery Flaky Crust. My thoughts so far on Batman Dark Patterns. It's my number 3 comic book of the year, which I think makes it the best superhero comic on the stands, if I'm thinking of what's in the top 3 right now correctly. Yeah, it's incredible, but I like Batman who has to solve things. I love Batman who makes mistakes, and I love Hayden Sherman's art, so I think it's a gimme for me. A gimme for me. M. Soul is here, longtime Crusher, first time live attendee. Whoa! We love that. That is so cool. Biff Bam Pow is reading Sleeper for his amazing podcast, which you should go and listen to, because missing an era of Wildstorm that occurred long before he was born. Now, I guess Sleeper was like 2003, so right around when he was born, slightly before he was born. But I'm always missing every single era of Wildstorm. Okay, wow, there's so many of you watching, and I really appreciate that. I'm really trying to stick with my regular time, and then there's going to be some extra times, because we gotta keep catching up. Okay, wow, the hair is kind of fun today, now that I'm seeing it with my actual glasses on. Okay, and here's James just reminding you of Johnny's podcast. Yeah, I don't think I can pin comments, and I think we've been through this on Omar's channel. I can't pin comments from the streaming world. I can only do it like on YouTube itself, which I guess I should pop out the chat from YouTube. Anyway, so we're going to do a Moment of Krisis, and I got to do some interesting things this week, so this is going to be like part life catch up, part Moment of Krisis, but it kind of crossed over. I thought of it while reading comics, and then I realized that, oh wow, I said comics correctly instead of comments. And then I realized it kind of also applied to my life, so we're going to do both. So, as I hyped, last week I had family here in Wellington for the first time since before the pandemic began. So I have not seen anyone who I have loved for a long time or been related to other than the members of my household since 2019, which is a really long time. It's a really long time to go between genuinely hugging someone, because I don't really have that many touchy-feely hug friends here in New Zealand. So it was a lot of fun. We did so much stuff. We ate so much good food. We played video games, which I usually don't make time for in my life, but video games are so fun. Social activity. And we did this adventure ropes course. I swear this is going to be about comics eventually. So we go to this course, and I had only ever so briefly looked at the website. Kid Krisis was mostly leading the charge here. And I just thought it was kind of like a lot of like rope ladders and rope bridges, and then you get to the top, and then you would zip line down. I knew it involved zip lines. So I'm like, that's cool. I'm the flying one in the family. I have gone skydiving. I have gone parasailing. I'm the one who likes roller coasters and heights. That's me. It is I, right? So I'm like, this is going to be great. So then we get there, and it turns out, I mean, you are clipped in the whole time with this really cool carabiner system that's like double safe. I was really fascinated. But there's literally no net. And it's not just zip lines, it's this Spider-Man-ass crazy stuff in midair where you have to like leap from things to things, or there's like stirrups to put your feet into, and then no road, no bottom, no net, you just walk across stirrups 50 feet in the air. And it gets progressively higher as you go. And even as the person who likes all of the air stuff, it occurred to me about halfway through this that I like air stuff where I'm falling in a controlled fashion. Right? All of my air stuff usually is like a roller coaster or a parachute. I'm not used to air stuff where if I step wrong, I just go, ooh, and then, you know, like the harness catches me. And there was this one thing in midair that basically there were X's, very on brand, you know, suspended in midair at each corner, and you had to step from X to X, but they were all hanging individually. When I got to the first one, I thought, put your center of gravity in the middle. No, that's not the right thing, because you have no control over this thing that's just hanging in the middle of the air. You want to actually stand to one side. And so it starts swinging like this, you know, and I'm on it going, no, and everybody heard me. And so all week, every time anybody doesn't like something, they say no, like the notebook push. Remember the old gif of the notebook push? It just goes, no. Well, that was me. Anyway. So as I'm doing these midair things and deeply regretting my life choices, I'm watching this other guy who's a couple of courses in front of us, and he's bigger than me. I don't mean to say anything about his body shape in general, but he's just larger than me, with also great hair. And he is just flying like a ballet dancer. And like, it's one of these, and as he comes down and is talking to people, I caught on that he had been to this course before. And that really made me think about this whole idea of like, new things, trying new things, forging new paths, pivoting versus the things you've always been good at. Because I love the idea of going back there. I want to do it again. It filled me with adrenaline. I've been thinking about it all week. But as I was doing it, there were several points that I said out loud, I can't do this. Somebody's going to have to come with the cherry picker and get me out of this tree, because I am not jumping to that next floating X platform. There is no way in heaven or hell you can make me do it. And then, you know what? I did it. And I'm sure if I went back every week, I would be great at that. But also, I'm starting this relatively late in life. And I think that other guy with the other gorgeous hair, that I think he was like some kind of rock climber or something, because he got this like rock climber kind of gear on. And like, yeah, of course somebody who's used to rock climbing and like dangling off of cliffs is not going to be as scared as this stuff as me. They've already been doing it. So that was really on my mind as I was reading comics and as I was going through my week, and it was a lot of fun. But then I had this other much smaller experience yesterday where I was at the grocery store checkout, and there was this person there that I always talk to, because it's like my regular person, because I go to the grocery store like clockwork, more regularly than the show comes on at a certain time. I go grocery shopping. And I learned that this person speaks French, which is not super common, just walking around in New Zealand. And we actually had a little mini 2-line conversation in French. Now, I've been learning French on and off for, I think, 30 years now. So at this point, there are certain little bits of French that just occur. Like, I hear them, I'm like, like, I don't even have to really think about it. That's as much fluency as I've gotten. And so I was thinking about those two things as I was reading my comics this week. The idea of trying new things and pivoting versus just growing in the thing that you're comfortable in and established in, and getting to the point that some of it just comes naturally, reflexively. Because I think we're always saying that we want to see new things from some of our favorite creators and some of our favorite properties. But sometimes when they kind of do that new path that isn't burnt in, and they try something that is quite literally a leap of faith, now I know the meaning of that term, sometimes it's uncomfortable, and sometimes it doesn't look great the first time, and it doesn't feel great the first time, and it doesn't feel like the thing that you're like used to and that you wanted. And I think so often we're asking, especially at Marvel right now, like, oh, take a leap of faith. But sometimes books get punished for taking a leap of faith. I mean, there are people, and I know this comes up a lot on the show, that just could not get right with Krakoa. They just really couldn't get into it. And Krakoa was a leap of faith. It was a different kind of X-Men than X-Men had ever been before. We had never seen X-Men do that. It wasn't the X-Men we were used to. But after some of that leap, we're like, wow, this feels cool. This feels different. We can do this with this brain and this body and this fandom. And then some people said, I don't like this leap. I would prefer to do something more familiar. And I also felt like that as I was reading some of the books this week, especially some of the books that I caught up on, namely Kaya, who that's in my image pick of the week, which is like Wes Craig went from doing Deadly Class to that. He could have very easily done another Remender book. He could have very easily done like another kind of like teens do crime kind of book, and everybody would have loved it. The guy's a master at his craft. And he said, no, actually, I'm going to write my own 50-issue fantasy series about two little kids who are trying to save the world from a robot invasion. We're going to talk about it later. It's an amazing comic book. And he just did that. And there was no signs that his fans were come along and enjoy it. There were no signs that he was going to be good at it. He just had the faith that that was the story that he was going to tell, and he took a leap of faith. And right now it is one of the few books that is in the indie world that is approaching the 30-issue mark. There are not a lot of indie series going that high, and in his recent author's notes, he said it looks like he's actually going to make it to 8 arcs, which is the story he's always wanted to tell. And we couldn't have that, and we can have Krakoa, we couldn't have a lot of these things unless somebody took a leap. And sometimes the leap is uncomfortable, and sometimes the leap itself is actually horrible, and it hurts, or you fall, and your harness catches you, or your book gets canceled, right? But sometimes that can still create something good in the future. So I was just thinking about that, like on a personal level, as well as on a comic book level. I don't think I do very much that's that scary or that uncomfortable in my life anymore in New Zealand, because I'm a creature of routine, and it's really hard to get me to do something brand new. And it was kind of like doing this amount of makeup was something really brand new that I started doing just for near mint condition streams, and I certainly wasn't doing it multiple times a week to be on this channel. Having a regular appointment with you where I stream live, that we're now coming up on half a year of doing that, that was a leap. I didn't know anybody was going to watch it. I'm still shocked that as many of you are watching it as you are, but I just started the first week of January, and I was like, well, we're just going to try this thing. And the first one, for those of you who were around for it, sucked. It was bad. But you know what? I kept doing it, and none of them has sucked as much as the first one. None of them. Even the worst of the worst, even the day the internet died, I don't know if any of them have quite sucked as much as the first one. So I was kind of just thinking about that as a corollary to my resolve, repair, recover, which is that sometimes the resolve is that you're going to resolve to take a leap. And that is true in trying new comics. I mean, that Petrichor comic that I'm obsessed with, perfect 5 out of 5, I almost didn't read it. I was like, I don't need to read this indie thing. The only reason I read it is because I saw it was from Red 5, and I know that I like Red 5, but I probably should have read it anyway because it was amazing. But the other thing is, there is power in sticking with the thing you know how to do. Like, it was cool to just speak French to this person without even truly thinking about it that much, and like that, I'll always say hi to them in French from now on because now I know. And so it just really made me reflect too that like when you take these leaps, the makeup, the stream, X-Men on Krakoa, Kaya, starting comic book that's nothing that your fans were asking for. It's not a terrible thing to also try to maintain some things in your life that are steady and great, right? And it's always a balance. If you're somebody who always tries new things, sometimes you kind of become a jack of all trades, master of none. And if you're a creative person, that means there's like sometimes you're not known for any one thing. And that's a scary and without a net situation too. So as we know, moments of crisis, never truly planned, but those were the things that were on my mind this week. And am I going to go back to the ropes course? I think maybe after doing some more yoga and getting more of my balance back. I think I was better at balance last year. And so I probably have to do that. But you know what? You know what I did last week? You know why I'm so happy right now? You know why this hair is so good? Because I started swimming again last week. And I'll be going back tomorrow. Okay, let's see if anybody had anything to say about that, and we are going to kick it off. Cedric and Ellen giving us critical lore. Ellen says the calico is Aurora, easy for us to remember, and the striped cat is Falco, Aurora's brother from another litter. We also have 2 other cats, Kuro and Dio. Love the names, love the cats. I love big fluffy cats. I can't have them because someone is allergic, and also I can't have animals who touch their poop with their claws walking on my bed. But eventually I will find a way to have a cat again. I love cats so much. Ranting Slots is here. Has been reading Nightwing Compendium 2 and just got to the part where Greg Land takes over for Scott McDaniel. I now understand why you like their art. Well, early Greg Land, pre-2010 Greg Land, is a very different beast from late Greg Land, and especially I think you're probably reading pre-2005 Greg Land. So yeah, he was one of those artists. I mean, talk about staying in your path versus a leap of faith. He had a very specific style, and over time that style kind of transformed into the current style. I have never read any of that Nightwing. Like, I'm vaguely aware of it because I have a Nightwing guide, so I've like paged through it, but I don't know what I got on my hair. I don't think my hair is quite that silver. Oh, ADHD alert. Okay, I should have like a but yeah, Greg Land has some high points. Okay. Do I think a lot about Kate Winslet's there in Titanic? I've never seen Titanic. Kane, the only 2 roller coasters I can thoroughly enjoy are Aerosmith's Rock and Roller Coaster because it's in the dark and blasts near music, and Rolling Thunder because it's low to the ground. I don't have the roller coaster tolerance that I used to. I went on this spinning thing here at this theme park in Auckland, and I truly thought I was going to die. I think I just, now that my life is longer, I have more fear. But I do love a good roller coaster. I mean, I used to go to the Jersey Shore roller coasters all the time. There was one on the Wildwood Boardwalk that had 2 loops, and then it would drop you backwards through the loops. And that was probably like my favorite coaster, even though it wasn't a high one, just because I had the opportunity to do it a lot. Rami Darwish is here saying hello to everybody. When I said dangling off Cliff the comics, Cliff, after we did that Evergreen, invited me to come on his channel and do something, but he does things on like Friday nights and Saturday mornings, which are the worst 2 possible times for me, because Friday nights is when I play D&D, and also it's like, you know, in the afternoon on a Saturday for me, and then in the morning he does a coffee and comic stream, and for me that's at like 2 a.m. So I don't know. One day Cliff and I will be united, but I don't know how or why. Buckmaster B adores Kea. Little kids go on an adventure against Big Bad World is one of my favorite tropes. Plus you got Jesse Lonerground, one of my favorite artists, working to do a backstory. I think we're going to be talking about that issue today. Yeah, I love it. I love it. It's creeping up my list of the best comics of all time, but no spoilers because I didn't put it in the thumbnail and it wasn't my pick of the week. But actually, I got to read what might be my number 2 comic of all time behind Lazarus for this week, and I get to talk about it. So I'm really, really excited. Jacob Millenbach asking, when do I think Marvel will reprint Secret Wars Omnibus series as a way to honor Jim Shooter's legacy? I don't know that Jim Shooter's name has the cachet from a sales perspective to the common fans the way that a George Perez's name does. So I don't know if we get a reprint just for that reason, but there is a little movie called Secret Wars coming up, so I wouldn't be shocked if they reprinted Secret Wars just for that reason. I have always said, and you can roll back the tapes, that Jim Shooter did an amazing job on Secret Wars, and I think it's much more of an interesting story than anybody gives it credit for, just because there were toys made out of it. I think a lot of people were like, it's toyetic. Well, it's toyetic, but I actually think there is a good story there. AMA, now that Lazarus book 4 is out, what is my most anticipated collected edition? Oh, probably that Wonder Woman Silver Age Omnibus number 3, which is solicited, I think, for January, because then we'll have all of Wonder Woman Silver Age, and then we just need 1 Golden Age, and then Bronze, which we're already cracking into in World's Finest. Yeah, I don't know if there's... I'm pretty excited for the Local Man Collection Deluxe coming out in July. And there's some other stuff on the horizon, but, you know, my collection, a lot of it is what it is already, and so sometimes new stuff just doesn't, I'm not going to buy it anyway. Lazarus is an outlier because I'm just so obsessed with it that I want it all on my shelf. So really, generally, my most anticipated collections are like things that have just never been touched in color, which doesn't really exist so much at Marvel anymore, so really it's like Wonder Woman and Wildstorm, usually. Jacob Millenbach asking, do I think... Oh, we already got that one. That was a great moment of crisis, thoughtful and inspiring. Well, you know, I aim to say something coherent, and sometimes I get there. One Wheel Tracks, gosh, I remember when House of X was first announced, and I was unsure of how I would find it, and how Hickman would have changed it until I read issue number 1. What a time that was. Do you remember when I hated issue 4 and 5 so much? I think... Maybe it was on the Explain the X-Men server. Maybe it was on like the Marvel Comic Books Discord, where I was like, I'm not going to read it anymore. This is terrible. I'm going to give up, because I don't like comics that are like, we're gonna have everybody die, but it's just a joke, they're not dying, but they like let you linger on the dying in the cliffhanger and like make you real. I just, those cliffhangers don't work for me. It's like, oh, Wolverine died, but we've seen him on the covers of like 8 issues coming after that. It just makes me angry. So I was so angry. In retrospect though, reading as a whole story, I do like House of X, I like Powers of X more. But yeah, Novarg is here with his creation L in his or is it Cal? Oh no, my mnemonic is failing me. It was either Cal or L. I know that because it was half of Superman. I don't remember which half. I loved swimming when I was growing up. I haven't been doing it in years. And also, hey, what's up, comic nerds? Go to your pool. I bet you have a pool somewhere. A community pool, a YMCA, a swim club. Go to your pool. When I got back in the pool last year after so many years of not swimming, it was so weird and scary at first. And then it just felt so at home. And every time I go back after a break, I'm like, I have 2 laps where I think I'm going to die and drown, which I did last week. And then I am just a water baby again, and I love it. Okay, when I did Cliff's show, we went on for 4 hours. We know Bunkmaster. We've all seen it. We saw you take off your pants. We were there. It's one of the most memorable live shows I've done. Again, the pants. Okay, and finally, Jamie C has been picking up FTA, that would be From the Ashes, the current X-Men line in trades, reading Grail, I can never say that word after all these years. Grey Malkin, right? But I want to say like Grell Malkin. Grill Malkin. Gleb Melikanov. I now get the dislike I've seen online after mostly liking the first trades. The Simone's issue and raid did not work for me. Yeah, well, we reacted to that live here on this channel, and Quinn Cognito, we were DMing right after those Hoxbox issues dropped, working through. We were working through it. That was live therapy. Live therapy. Well, it is the 30-minute mark, and I think we are ready to talk about the book. So I think we're actually kind of right on schedule today. So here is the thing. There are a lot of books to talk about this week. I read over 50 new books, but then I caught up on arcs of 3 series that I've been saying, oh, I wish we could talk about that. I wish we could talk about it. I decided this was the week. I was drawing the line in the sand, partially because I really wanted to, oh no, this is cool. Okay. I really wanted to be able to put them on my mid-year list, so I was like, well, this is it. This is the last chance at the OK Corral. We've got to do it this week. So I'm going to be talking about comics A through J first. If you put comments into the chat that are about the comic we're on, or like one comic behind, then I will absolutely highlight them and we can talk a little bit about them. If you're going back for a comic I covered a little while ago, or you're trying to ask some big, deep philosophical question, that's going to have to wait for the gap after the J's, just because we like to keep it moving, and there are a lot of pages. I think I have 275 pages in my PDF to go over today, which is insane, and we all know that I'm going to spend more than a minute on some of them. I'm just going to look one more time at the existing comments. Jacob saying, in my opinion, what characters do I like to see in a crossover now that Marvel and DC are doing crossovers? None, because they're not in continuity and I don't care. I don't mean to be combative like I was about Titanic. I have never seen Titanic though, but I don't. There was some book this week, I forget what it was, where I found myself saying, I'm so thankful this story is continuing and does have a universe that it's in, because that's the only thing that can make me care. Oh, I remember what it was. And because when something is just like a one-off and it doesn't attach to anything, it could be the greatest script in the world, but like in my memory, it doesn't cling to anything. So like, do I want to see, I don't know, Kate Bishop as Hawkeye and Black Canary? That would be a lot of fun. Kelly Thompson writes them both spectacularly. I think I would really enjoy it. That story would not stick in my brain because it's just not a part of their continuity. It's not a part of their ongoing story, and that's just how the wires in this particular brain work. So I literally have 0 characters and combinations of characters on my wish list of like comic book crossovers, because I mean, it's cool when it happens. Batman and the Max was fun, I guess, because Sam Keith was drawing it. But yeah, it's just one of those things my brain doesn't do, and I know that makes me different from other comic book fans, and my opinion is not right or wrong, it's just a very different opinion, and that is just how my brain works. Okay, it is L. See? It works. But just a reminder, we don't do Pete here. I got a little bit ornery when somebody was doing it as a joke on the Newman Condition stream, and I felt a little bit bad afterwards, but that name gives me bad feelings, and so we just don't do it. You didn't know that. Vague disclaimer is nobody's friend, so that's why we're just being Krisis, and for folks that know me personally sometimes use my name, but never Pete. Never Pete. which I know you didn't mean in a bad way or anything. It's just a good chance to say I was right that his name is Al, and also to remind everybody that I don't do that. Wait, more, I was going to be on time, but then you all kept being interesting. My first time commenting on a stream, even though I can't stick around. I just discovered me recently, and I've been binging my streams. I also see my comments on the Drag Race subreddit. Yes, I'm a huge Drag Race fan. Everybody knows when Hayden shows up, we have a little 2-minute Drag Race recap on here. I love my Drag Race and comic book crossover people. I love when Drag Race queens are like huge comic book fans and they're actual comic book nerds who have read the comic books. I was just listening to some Drag Race podcast where like they said an X-Men thing and I was like, okay, we all know you watch the cartoon. They all love Storm from the cartoon. But no, then they started, I Live for This with Trinity the Tuck and Chantal Sparkles. Chantal Sparkles is like a serious Marvel Comics fan, also such an amazing drag queen who has not been on Drag Race. And she started going into like something about like Cable or X-Man or something, and I was like, oh yeah, Chantal knows actual comic book lore, not just MCU lore. I just was tickled, totally tickled. Okay. Let's go, shall we? So we have a lot of books to talk about this week, and let's get into it, if I remember how this internet works. Okay, can you see my little pin in the background? That's how I know that I've centered correctly. I don't want to move it too far over, because that's how I know I framed correctly. Okay, here we go. Let me just make this. There we go. Okay. As we all know, I no longer read to 2000 AD, but I do like the covers, and so we just start with it. It is part of the tradition here. I did read Absolute Green Lantern, and I want to say before I start, I did not like this week of comic books as much as I have liked the past couple of weeks. There are many that I liked individually, but there are a little bit more negative takes this time, so you just gotta hang in, and this was one of my least favorites. I'm just letting you know, it's not gonna be me hating on things all week long. Okay, let's begin. I have secondhand embarrassment for this artist, Janoy Lindsay, who is drawing from Al Ewing's script, colored by coloring himself, and then, or themselves, I don't know, and then letters by Lucas Catoni, because this is a really big stage, this Absolute Universe stage, and this person cannot draw character models, and that's a really rough spot to be in when you're in a line that has all of the people that have been drawing Absolute Batman and Absolute Martian Manhunter and Absolute Wonder Woman and all that. It's just not good. The shape of John Stewart's face is different in every panel on this page. His cheekbones are different. His jaw is different. All the supporting characters are different. But that takes us away from how bad the story is. It's pretty bad. We get more than 15 seconds into the comic this week, so I guess good job, Al Ewing. But the whole thrust of it is like, ooh, gold goes through the Green Lantern stuff. Now, I'm not the biggest Green Lantern lore person, as we have established, but I know yellow makes Green Lantern weak, so to have the big revelation after 3 issues that gold stuff goes through the Lantern barrier, this whole Absolute line is supposed to be about reinvention. I want the Madonna reinvention tour here. And Al Ewing ain't reinventing crap. And this Janoy Lindsay, I'm sure, is a very nice person. I'm sure I would enjoy his art on some title at Boom or maybe IDW. But that Jon Stewart face, not the same. That Jon Stewart face, not the same. I will give it one more issue before I drop it with prejudice, but I do have secondhand embarrassment watching somebody work out how to keep character models on model in one of the biggest books in the industry. Next, we come to Absolute Superman, and this has my dream team back on it, although I have loved the art team in the issues recently, but Jason Aaron writing, Rafa Sandoval back on art, of course with Ulysses Orella still coloring, and Becca Carey, one of my favorite letters, doing letters. This says that it's an all-new story starts here. That's a lie. It's not an all-new story. It is absolutely the continuation of the same story. But we got some new elements and some new arrangements, and I did enjoy it. One of which is we got to spend some time with this universe's Ra's al Ghul, and he is scary and bad in a different way than the main universe one is scary and bad, and that's what we're looking for, a subtle remix. Here he is a business person. He has a corporation rather than the League of Shadows, and he's using the Lazarus Pits in a different way. And then the rest of the issue, we get this very interesting tug-of-war between Lois Lane and Jimmy Olsen, who's part of the Omega Men here, for this young new Superman. And I do think that we're kind of getting long in the tooth here with how much at length we've been kept from this Superman. We want to hang out with Superman. We've only gotten a few issues where we have, but I think seeing his relationship forming and who he's willing to trust between Lois and Jimmy certainly is a huge aspect of Superman, and the art and the colors are just so good. Rafa Sandoval just kind of pushes my buttons in a way that very few people in the industry do, and so I really enjoyed it, and I enjoyed the Lazarus Corp stuff is really, really cool and scary. We've kind of met who the villains are of the Superman book right now, and I think that's something that Aaron is doing very right, and one of them is a Superman villain that we're very, very used to, and another one of them is a Superman villain that we are not used to at all. James Abel saying, what a great issue and an excellent cliffhanger. I don't want to give anything away, but best issues so far. Excellent, excellent, excellent. Okay, let's continue. I saw a couple of the comics were just comics comments. I don't know, that was on the borderline. You don't have to drink. We're going to keep moving. Adventure Time number 3. I don't read that. I do read All New Venom from Al Ewing, and of course somebody I'm really enjoying, Carlos Gomez on art, colored by Frank D'Amato with letters from Clayton Cowles. So this issue did something very interesting, and I'm still kind of searching my feelings for where I am on it. So it starts with this really great scene of MJ and Flash, and they are both very aware of everything that's going on with all the symbiotes right now. Not just the Venom symbiote, which is kind of what we call the main symbiote, but also like all the other symbiotes and what they're doing. Of course, Flash is kind of anti-Venom, but he's really just Agent Venom. Anyway, I liked it because I really could do a whole book of Spider-Man supporting characters. Like, I like his supporting cast. That's what the side books used to do. Like, Spectacular and Web used to exist so that we could spend more time with his supporting cast. And all of this stuff really, really worked for me. And then we go to, you know, Paul, the much-hated Paul, who I actually kind of find funny, and Dylan, who's being used as the audience insert to be mean to Paul, are spying on Rick Jones and Robbie Robertson. I love this. I could have read a whole issue just of this. Then the Venom fight happens, drawn spectacularly, of course, by Carlos Gomez. And the reason it can really work for me, I think better here than it has in previous issues, is because it was so tied in to this whole supporting cast and their motivations for each other. The whole first arc of like, who is Venom? Who is Venom? I think it just kept me at arm's length. I understood why they did it. I understood the hype and the news that got to break in the industry. I get it. But now that we know things that the characters don't know, and the characters are working through trying to figure it out while we're like, no, dummy, that's actually working so much better for me. And this issue I thought was a lot of fun. Is it the greatest comic book on the stands right now? No. Is Al Ewing way past his prime on this Venom run and needs to learn when to step off stage? Yes, but I did enjoy this issue. James Abel saying All New Venom number 7. The artwork seems to have different layers to it, and some of it pops from the pages. I also feel like the writer is trying to tell 5 different stories at once. By the way, TaylorMade is here saying hello to Crushers. Yeah, Novar, going back to Absolute Superman for just a moment. You know, Rafa Sandoval is so good, and he's so detailed that I get that he can't do every issue. And I always, there's those 2 Italian artists, I get their names confused, but whoever it was that was in the middle here, it was either Giandomenico or Camocoli. I always get them confused. They have similar styles. But I was really skeptical that it would have been as good, but they're another master, and especially with the consistency of the coloring, it really did work for me. But yeah, I would love it if Rafa Sandoval could just draw every issue. He's titanically great. Totally, totally, totally amazing. I am always in love. Now we come to Amazing Spider-Man, and this is of course written by Joe Kelly with Pepe Larraz on art, colored by Montegracia and lettered by Joe Caramagna. And I actually have to start with, I'm going to skip this page for a second, some compliments to Montegracia, who I have been hard on in the past. But I do have to send my compliments here because this art was really good and it was colored in a really interesting way. Oh, you know, I've been on the wrong microphone this whole time. This art was colored in a really interesting way. Spider-Man always gives us the blue and the red, and so we're always going to be in primary colors whenever Spider-Man is here. And I think for that reason, a lot of people avoid using yellow on Spider-Man because it just gets so primary colory and it starts kind of looking very kind of like grade school. But Montegracia used yellow to really high impact here in the coloring, and it wasn't just on this page, it was repeatedly. We got a lot of bright yellow explosions, a lot of like orangey yellows in the colors, and then also the letters from Joe Caramagna echoed that, and I thought that was really fun, and it just made this issue look different than the other issues, because I think when people keep the yellow out of the palette, it's very deliberate, and it kind of leads to this very knocked back look like we got on this first page. Now, this was an action issue, and that's fine, because what's great about this is it's an art book, because the art is so good, but it's also a storybook. And I think that this resolved the first arc of story in a really satisfying way. I love how Joe Kelly is writing Peter Parker. This is the most fun I've had in a main Amazing Spider-Man run since at least 2018, if not before. It just feels like Spider-Man to me. It makes me really, really excited. And what I love is that Pepe Larraz, as good as he is at action and superhero action, I love these subtle moments. I mean, here's just Peter Parker on the phone with Norman Osborn, kind of being like, telling him like, hey, watch out for being the Green Goblin. And he says, destroying my little empire is part of my atonement. I've got the best people on it. I'll make it my mission to crush Roderick Kingsley and anyone he's ever had coffee with. And Peter's like, not ominous. I can't talk today. Not ominous at all. A little advice, hire a vocal coach. Help smooth out the scary from your phone voice. I just love everything about how that was put together, and I know I was incoherent explaining it to you, but just that the page has this very dark, ominous look to it. Ominous look to it. And then Peter Parker in the script makes fun of that. Now, of course, script came first, but I love that Larraz and then also Gracia went down the coloring route to kind of give this a sort of foreboding look of Norman Osborn in shadows in his penthouse suite, and knowing that the payoff of the joke was at the bottom of the page. I just loved it. James Abel loved the last 2 pages with Aunt May. Yeah, Joe Kelly is writing the hell out of Aunt May, which is more exciting than I thought it would be. Jamie C47 saying, I liked this issue, enjoyed the fight. Great art from Larraz as always, and enjoyed the sweet ending with Aunt May. A lot of Aunt May fans in the chat today. Shout out to our Aunt May fans. Arcana Royale by Cullen Bunn. Cullen Bunn's always got so many irons in the fire. I don't know how he does it, but sometimes he doesn't. And that was the case for a couple of his books this week with me. This is his indie book from Dark Horse, issue number 2, from art from AC Zamudio, and colors from Bill Crabtree, letters from Joshua Reed. So I really liked the first issue of this. If you look back at a previous show from me, I was very hype on it. I thought it was really cool. It's about this woman who's involved in this kind of arcane card tournament, and she really needs to win, not just for the money, but for some kind of magical impact. This issue did something I really disliked, which is that it explained everything. Now, we know I like literal comic books. So at first I was like, ooh, good, explain all the things. I like it. But it explained everything about the magic of the world and why the card game does what it does and how doing well. It's not like a normal cards game. It's played with like tarot cards, and it changes the reality of the world. The more and more you win, the bad things that are on the cards happen to people. And it was just, I don't know, it was like a little too literal. Like I would have liked to get there on my own as an audience member, but then it takes us into the game. And it should have made the game more magical, but for me, actually, the game just felt more commonplace, because it actually, before all the questions were like, ooh, what does this card do? What is happening? But now that it's made so literal, it's just like poker that the author doesn't have to track the actual poker hands of, because the game is a nonsense game. And then she gets dealt out of the game, and I was like, oh, I thought this was a tournament book. And then another character's like, I'll buy her back in so she can keep playing. I'm like, what is the point of this story then? Like, we already know what the card game does. It doesn't matter watching them play cards because there's no coherent card game to play, and it doesn't matter if she loses, so why are we reading? And so I'm done. Not in a bad way, not with prejudice, again, but like, there's only so many hours in the day, there's only so many dollars in the wallet. I think if this is the pitch that you've made for me after 2 issues, it just didn't stick. But Cruel Angel has some thoughts too, if I can find my mouse cursor, saying, these cards have consequences. Does Hudson have what it takes to win now that she might care more about the suffering and tragedies caused by the cards she plays? And I think that is the hook. If you are hooked, and if you're going to keep reading it, it's kind of like, now that she understands fully the impact of her actions, is she going to keep participating, which it seems that she will. To me, that just wasn't enough of a hook, but I can understand why people keep reading it. I know, is this Armory Wars? This is the comic book from Coheed and Cambria, right? The band? Because this cover is fire, and I know this is like the penultimate issue, and somebody on Patreon has asked me if I would do a guide to this before. I'm like, I don't know, I've never read it. Now I'm kind of like, ooh, would this be fun to binge? Has anybody read it? Is it as fun as this cover makes it look? Tell me. So now we come to Marvel's digital comics, the first of which is Astonishing Avengers by Steve Orlando, with art from Francesco Archidiacono and colors from Carlos Lopez, letters from Travis Lanham. This did exactly the thing that I want this comic book to do, which is that it put a bunch of Avengers that are not getting play in the main book on a ridiculous side quest. We get Wasp, we get She-Hulk, and we get Monica Rambeau, who are going to help the former She-Thing, Sharon Ventura, who is a wrestler, with the case of some wrestlers seemingly being kidnapped from her local wrestling league. I think that Carlos Lopez on the art took it there. I mean, these wrestling costumes are hilarious, and the whole sequence of them trying to decide on their wrestling personas were really fun. This is what I want. I always want a fun Avengers book happening. And I think that, like, this was just a first story in this arc. And of course, each arc is 4 to 6 digital issues, which would just be one regular issue. So I'm not expecting any big rising and falling action here. But for what it was to get me into this story with 3 characters, look, I would buy a book that had Monica Rambeau, Wasp, and She-Hulk in it literally every day of the week. I would spend $3 a day on that comic book if I could. So I absolutely love this cast. And I love, of course, you got to play a beat where Wasp is like, these are the costumes. Like, you've got to. Just quick hello to James the Mediamancer, who is slipping in a little bit late. And Bunk, I knew you would want to read an Avengers Wrestling book. It is currently being released on Marvel Unlimited. So if you have Marvel Unlimited, you can read it for free. I'm absolutely not spending a minute on this Spider-Man book that I hate so much. I think we've established that I'm just reading it to read it, and boy, do I dislike it. But I'm going to spend a minute on Astonishing X-Men, issue number 24. This is another one of these Infinite comics, and this particular arc, this is the part 6 of the 6-part arc, I've Seen Tomorrow, by Tim Seeley with artist Eduardo Odino, colors from KJ Diaz, and letters from Clayton Cowles. Now, I've been really hype on this book, and I've been telling you to go and read it, go and read it, go and read it, because I think Tim Seeley has been getting this Generation X cast so right. Their powers, their voices, and I like that he's just been adding a little at a time. Then we added the Mutant Liberation Front into the mix last issue. Totally sold, totally with it, loved this mystery. It wraps up so fast here, and I know I always have to take myself out of thinking that this is a whole issue, because really it's just like the back 1/6 of a single oversized issue. But there was no there. Like, we basically established the idea that Wildside was using his hallucinatory powers to connect to some future, and Banshee kind of calls him out here and says, oh, turns out you're just doing hallucinations. But then that's the end. After all this build-up and all the investigation, they went to the influencers convention, they tracked these people into the desert, the whole thing just ends, spoilers, by Banshee being like, nope, you're just using your hallucination powers. And then all the Mutant Liberation Front, who are here, the Mutant Salvation Front, are like, aw, shucks. And it just ends. I don't know. I mean, I know Tim Seeley was like up against the page limit of these 6 digital issues, and it just feels like we were really building towards something interesting. Now, there is a final page reveal that shows this actually connects very specifically to Jed MacKay's current X-Men run, which I think is cool. And I love when the digital books exist in the same world as the current books, but it just unfortunately like didn't take me across the finish line in an exciting way. This was a skip week for Avengers Academy. So there's no Avengers Academy, which brings us to Batgirl, issue number 8. Now, I was as hard could be on the opening arc of this Batgirl book by Tate Bromball. Here he has a artist that's with him just for 2 issues, Isaac Goodhart, colored by Mike Spicer with letters from Tom Napolitano, as we're getting an origin of Lady Shiva. And I will confess something, let's be vulnerable here. I had no idea that Lady Shiva was like a Bronze Age DC character that originated in the Richard Dragon Kung Fu Fighter book. I had no idea. Now, this origin story, first of all, Isaac Goodhart's art, so clean, so expressive, so much character acting, not just in the face, but the bodies. I think when I talk about character acting all the time, I'm talking about faces and expressions, but you can do character acting with the bodies. I'm just seeing Cass kind of like hunch forward as she digs into this huge meal. She's got like multiple lunches, I think, here that she's taken, unless that's the person sitting next to her. I don't think there is anybody next to her, though. It just sold to me something. But also the art of the body language throughout the issue as we get this Lady Shiva flashback about her youth and her young adulthood with her sister who's killed. It was so easy to read. It was so engaging. And I think that's partly just the artwork, because it's the same script, and I hated the script for the first 6 issues. But also it was a little bit weird because once I cottoned on to the fact that all of this was based on Bronze Age comics in Richard Dragon, which I've never read, I was like, oh, like there's not even a footnote. I only know that it exists because I worked on the DC poll. Like, I was like, do a lot of modern readers know this? Because I did not know this. I didn't realize that these 2 guys were like existing characters in the world. I thought they were just being introduced here. And then I started to question like each of these individual scenes of them going on adventures together. I'm like, so is this from a Bronze Age comic? Is this whole thing like a retcon flashback? So part of me was like, geez, GC, would you please just put some editorial notes in every so often so I know what's happening? But part of me found it like really enjoyable because I liked it even before I figured that out. I know some people are really tired of this flashback and they want to get back to the Batgirl part. I'm just a little frustrated because I don't think Tate Bromball is writing Batgirl all that well, but I think he's writing Lady Shiva incredibly well. So I have a little bit of trepidation about cutting back to Batgirl in the next issue. Cruel Angels sang, our Shiva history lesson ends along with Carolyn's life with David Kane arriving on the scene. Love the art and the colors and the nightmare image. Yeah, I did think it was really cool. Like, I don't know my Batman lore that much, especially from the 2000s, which I wasn't reading comics. So I know Lady Shiva is Cassandra Cain's mom. I had no idea who her father was. So when he showed up and said his name here, but he was like a bad guy, I was like, ooh, like it really got me. So I guess like mission accomplished. Yeah. And Lance McNair, loving the art in Batgirl, haven't read beyond issue 1. Well, this is a different artist than issue number 1. It has had great art all along. There hasn't really been an art fail. I thought the first arc was just a little too decompressed, but I really love this too. I just want to read a Lady Shiva book, which apparently I did for 2 issues. So who knows what I'm going to think about it when it goes back to Batgirl. Usually we go right from Batgirl to Birds of Prey, but this week we had a new book in between, Be Not Afraid. Now, I have read some other indie, unsettling comic books from Jude Ellison S. Doyle, and I have enjoyed them, so they were, for a while, on my list of things that I would always check out. I don't know if that's still going to be my list after this issue. Illustrated by Lisandro Estherren, colored by Francesco Segala with flats from Gloria Martinelli, and lettered by Simon Boland. So this is... We know that I like my Antichrist stuff, and this is an Antichrist book. It's about this woman has a child, but she never actually has him. Much in the way that Mary had a virgin birth, she is about to give birth, and then the kid just walks into the room like, "Hi, mommy!" Like, and she's like, "What? What? I was just in the middle of something, and now I'm not." But the kid just turns out to be evil. He's a little Antichrist, and now he's 17. It's his 17th birthday, and he's terrorizing this town. And we get this long beat of he has this really friendly piano teacher who's nice to him, and so he like tortures her in specific and gives her cancer, and then he's doing all this evil stuff in the town, and then he's torturing his mom. And here's the thing, I love Antichrist books. If you've never read Baby Teeth by Donny Cates, I love it so much. So I am an easy mark for this, but this book didn't give me any directions to go in. Like, the lore of why he's the Antichrist is interesting. It's because his mom, spoilers, his mom slept with an angel, but instead wound up with a devil child as like punishment for giving in to her lust to sleep with the angel, which was illustrated really well, and I thought it was interesting. But like, there's no why to him being the Antichrist, and I don't need a why. He's the Antichrist, but he's just like mean to be mean, and everybody in the town is sad. And it's like, okay, well, he's been terrorizing the same town for 17 years. Cool, I guess. And also in the art, there was almost this like fisheye quality to it, where everybody always looked like we were looking at them through a lens, and they were like a little bit distended at points, which really kind of got on my nerves. And then it ends with this guy being like, "Be not afraid, we're gonna kill your son." Like, okay, to me it was one of those comics that just felt like a one-shot. Like, okay, he's evil, okay, he's torturing the town, okay, we're gonna kill him. I just didn't, there was nothing delightful or scary or to sympathize with, either with him or with the town, because it kind of just happened. And it's so hard to describe, because I know sometimes I say this and other people are like, "No, I loved it," but like, I just didn't get anything from it. So anyway, maybe you'll like it. I tried to explain it in a really even-handed way. I don't think anything about it was horrible. It just wasn't a book that made me want to read a second issue of it. Bunkmaster likes the idea that he's not so much the Antichrist, but instead just a jerk teenager, right? Maybe he's going to turn 18 and then be like, "Oh, I'm so sorry for all that cancer I caused you, piano teacher. You were so nice." So now we come to Birds of Prey. And this had middle issue syndrome. And when I talk about middle issue syndrome, it's like the beginning of the arc happened. We were all super excited about it. And then the writer needs to move some pieces around on the board. And so the middle issue of the arc is kind of just like watching things get moved around. And that's kind of what Kelly Thompson did here. It was not the most exciting issue of Birds of Prey, although I do love the art from Sammy Basri, who I love. Adriano Lucas on colors, Clayton Calza on letters. But basically, last issue we got this amazing villain team that was so big and so scary and took out the birds one by one, and now they're trying to figure out, like, how did they get the jump on us, and where is Barda? But there's just this really weird sequence where, like, we spend pages and pages of some of the birds in the desert looking where Barda had crashed to the earth after being launched from space. And then they're like, see a building in the distance. And then they walk to the building. And then they're like, now we're in the building. And we get pages of that. And then from the building, they see something in the desert and they walk back to the desert. It just didn't feel like really efficient page layout. It just felt like Kelly Thompson was like, okay, let's just we got to move the pieces. Let's move the pieces. We got to see the building. We got to get out of the building. We got to see the thing in the desert. It just didn't feel elegant. It felt like a script that needed another pass to me. And a lot of it felt like that. It just felt like there was a lot of characters kind of wandering around. Even at the end when there's a conflict, it's like they go to a place and then there's another place, and it just felt very move the pieces. I don't think it was bad. I think it was fine, but I do expect more from Birds of Prey generally, especially with Ellen highlighting that she just bought the first trade of Birds of Prey, which I think has one of the best first issue scripts I have ever read. I've read that first issue so many times, and I very rarely reread modern comic books. I've reread that first, I've at least read it 5 or 6 times. It's so good, and that first trade is so good. I don't think the second one is out yet, because Kid Crisis was asking me to get it from the library. I'm like, I don't think it exists yet. I read the issue 2 Buried long ago, and I think I'm done with it here. I don't think it's bad. It's written by Anthony Cleveland with art from Alex. Oh gosh, they do all of it in this crazy cursive. Cormac, letters from Justin Birch, and there you go, we made it. So the first issue of this book was so interesting because it was kind of this old world story. It's this family, I forget if they're like Russian or something, but they kind of were like the daughters or reading the storybook and talking about these myths as they live in this very weird, harsh real world with their mother, who's kind of a black widow. She's just marrying men and killing them. So first she gets some money, then she gets a farm, and the kids have never seen her do this, but they know something's up, right? But this is the only page in this book that still has that storybook quality. Gorgeous page. And then the rest of the book is all about an outhouse. So yeah, it's about digging the outhouse, having to go to the bathroom in the outhouse, what happens to all the pee and the poo after it gets dumped in the outhouse. That's what the whole book is about. It's about poop. It's about poop. And I do get that we kind of confirm on panel the scary Black Widow aspect of the mom. We confirm on the panel that there's like something supernatural going on, but it just kind of felt like such a metaphor for the script that the whole thing was kind of just in the shitter because it didn't really go anywhere for me. Like I guess it did develop a little because we confirmed that the supernatural thing is real and the kids found out the mom is a Black Widow, but again, it was just one of those books like I don't know if I need to know what happens next. Like, okay, so the mom is a Black Widow, there is something supernatural in the yard, the outhouse is haunted. Great. Nothing wrong with it, not a terrible comic book. I just, in my world of reading more than 50 comic books a week, it is not clearing the bar. James Abel saying the artwork did a great job with making it feel like it was early 1900s with horror parts. Yeah, I do think that Alex Cormac is doing a really nice job on art here. I think he's had to draw, he had to draw a pig stampede. He had to draw a dinner and a rundown farmhouse. Like, I think in the setting, he's doing a really good time. Just didn't really excite me. And Bunk saying, actually, the second Birds of Prey did come out very recently. Maybe it just has not hit the Wellington library system yet. Okay, I didn't read this. Geek Girl Exodus. Apparently Geek Girl, which is this indie comic book, is having like a whole event. I couldn't find it digitally, so I didn't read it. Okay, next we come to Daredevil. And speaking of things I'm embarrassed about, I think there's 3 different things I'm embarrassed about on the behalf of comic creators this week. Actually, I'm embarrassed on behalf of the editors this week. This issue has 2 different artists again, just like the last issue. And it's not like we're switching art in between like a Daredevil in costume scene and a home scene. It just changes in the middle of the action. If it's the same 2 artists, and I think it is, why not just have one of them draw one issue and one of them draw the other issue? This to me is really indicating we are coming up on like some kind of big relaunch or whatever. We already know that this is ending, I think, with issue 25, because Marvel would not be rushing issues out as fast as they are on every title right now if they were not trying to pump a bunch of things out before a bunch of number 1s hit. But even still, just let one be delayed like a week or something so we don't have to keep having different artists, because so the 2 artists are Jose Luis Soares and Carlos Nieto. Soares, who draws the first half, is incredible, especially colored here by Jesus Bertov. Really good. The black costume looks great. It's like so detailed. Definitely getting a little bit some like Quesada vibes. Also like Jason Burrows or even like John Jose Rip, who I really love. Like, it was good. I was in it. The story's kind of a throwaway. It's a some fungus guy is fighting Daredevil. Okay, whatever. But the art was good. And then it just changes. And I actually really like Carlos Nieto, but I don't know that his art actually worked well with Soares. And it changes right in the middle of him being in costume. So it's not even like we like waited to the denouement and like we were in scenes of him in plain clothes. It just makes me so angry. Like, nobody's going to go back and say positive things about this run. It just feels like the apex of Marvel admitting that these books are totally disposable, of like, the story doesn't matter, the art doesn't matter, we're just keeping the trains running on time, the book's just going to come out as soon as it comes out, and that is what we're going to do. And Why are we spending money on that? Like, if it's so ephemeral that it only matters on the release week, and even on the release week it's not that good, then who is this for? Why are we making it? Maybe you should have just ended at issue 19 then, if it didn't matter at all. Okay, it makes me angry, and I hate that I'm angry about it, because the first 15 pages were great artwork, but this is like the 4th or 5th issue in a row where we're just randomly changing artists. I don't understand. Like, DC has a whole line of comic books where they only do this occasionally, and when they do, they often do it with purpose. I don't understand how it's every issue of Daredevil. Okay, this was a reprint comic. DC Comics presents Superman, the official comic book stories that inspired the new movie. It had 3 old issues. It had like Lex Luthor, Man of Steel, and Man of Tomorrow, maybe, or no. So anyway, it reprints 3 issues. It's on newsstands. It's not available digitally. Now we come to DC Pride, and I have a lot of pages here because this was not just one creative team. It was a main story that was mostly written by Tim Sheridan, but all the others, artists and writers, kind of dipped in and out of it. And oh boy, do I have a lot to say. Okay, so I loved Tim Sheridan's Alan Scott Green Lantern series from the 2023 and 2024. If you haven't read it yet, it was one of my top 10 books of both of those years because it straddled the year. You should go and read it. So I went into this really excited to get more of his Alan Scott. I think he wrote an incredible look at Alan Scott as a closeted soldier in World War II and how that caused him in the long term to completely repress his sexuality and his identity until the modern day in a way that really kind of justifies and explains why that character has come out now. People are like, well, he wasn't always gay, but like it actually makes a lot of sense. Unfortunately, this book, which is meant to be celebrating DC's queer heroes, actually ghettoizes DC's queer heroes in a way that made me incredibly angry, and also the writing was bad. But we'll get there in a second, because the idea is that all of their queer heroes all go to the same bar and they all draw their little things on this wall of the bar, which is meant to like evoke something about Stonewall Bar. But like, because every gay DC character, every queer, every asexual DC character, they've all gone to this bar. And so because they all drew on this magical wall in this one bar, they all get summoned from their various individual stories back into the bar. This, by the way, is Max Sarin from Giant Days drawing Harley Quinn, which was very, very funny. And so then they're all there. And the other thing that really made me angry is that none of them get their own story. They all get what is their dream lives, and their dream lives are all of them being like queer and happy, but it's all a fantasy sequence because they can't actually have it because it's the wall of the bar doing it. And the writing was dreadful. I mean, we all know how much I hate Vita Ayala's writing. I'm always rooting for them. I tried their books over and over. I think at this point we can just say they don't write in a way that I appreciate in the slightest. And I love being on Team Non-Binary, but I can't be on that particular Team Non-Binary. But their writing was terrible. This Connor Hawke story doesn't even ever say his name or explain who he is. Like, especially if you're going to play a bunch of B and C string queer characters in your 80-page queer anthology, like maybe introduce them by name and tell me who they are, because some of them are going to be like smaller characters that we're not familiar with. And also it just really, like, if this is his fantasy dream, like it has this woman kissing him and him being like, no thank you, because he's asexual. Like, why would she be making out with him in his fantasy sequence? That's strange. It just, the whole thing didn't feel like a celebration of these queer characters. It felt like a ghettoization of these queer characters and saying they never can have what they want, and we don't care who they are, and we're only going to put the shittiest writers on them, and we're going to shoehorn them all into a story where it doesn't make sense at all, because it was the only interesting queer story that we've told over the past couple of years, and that's what we got. I'll come to that in a second. It just made me really angry. It was really hard to read. I found it really insulting, and DC, I think, frequently is looked at as though they are the market leader between them and Marvel in terms of queer creators and queer stories, and they do a lot of really great things in that zone. This, to me, and you know, I'm just one person who just in the past few years have started really thinking of myself as being under the queer umbrella, so my opinion is not a monolith. I don't speak for all queer readers. I found this not only to be a bad comic book, but incredibly, incredibly insulting. Insulting in a way that bordered on offensive. That's me. But I do want to talk about this backup story. It's called Master Planner. It's by Jenny Blake, who you may know as Tony Isabella, and she's made very clear she does not consider that a dead name. We can still say it to refer to her and her past work, and she's very proud of the work that she has done as Tony Isabella. It's art by Sarah Solar, and letters by letter I really enjoyed Jody Troutman, who I'm friends with on Blue Sky, and this is an amazing story. It did kind of make the entry fee worth it for me here, because it's the story about how Jenny Blake has always been trans. And it's all those years that we were reading her writing as Tony Isabella, she was trans those years. She just didn't fully understand it. And I think it was interesting because it's her story and it's so authentic and so interesting to see how comic books and reading comic books were a huge part of that identity for her, even though comic books were not overtly queer in the 50s and 60s. Like, she still found those themes in the comic books, which was fascinating to me. But then also, much like a comic book character, she was always herself queer, but she wasn't queer in the text. It was just happening in the subtext and the scenes we didn't see. And so it's kind of her also kind of saying in her own winking way, like, you don't know everything that's going on in these characters' worlds. And sometimes, like with Alan Scott, there can be significant developments that we're only aware of later that fit perfectly within their story. And some of the things that Jenny Blake reveals about herself and her transness here was like really legitimately surprising, even shocking to me. I thought I kind of assumed I knew something about her story because I've been reading all of her blogs about it, and I think she's just a terrific writer. I almost love pretty much anything of hers I've ever read. And I thought I had made some assumptions about it, and those assumptions are wrong. So, like, I think this was a true celebration of a queer artist, and it has queer characters in it that she kind of references, but it's really her story. I just think it's wonderful. She says at the end that she might be doing a whole illustrated autobiography called My Closet is Full of Comic Books and Me. If she were to do that, I would be there on day one. I loved this story so much. And I wish I could recommend buying this issue just to read it, but the rest of the issue was just so bad that I don't know if I can separate the two. Logan Wayne has never heard of a person who does like Vita Ayala's writing, except for some of her colleagues on Twitter. I'm not hating on them, or their colleagues on Twitter. I'm not hating on them, though, because they receive enough of that from Comicsgate. I'm just saying they're not too many people's tastes. Yeah, you know, they have really cool ideas. I did like them on New Mutants. There was a period of New Mutants that I was really into their writing. There's just something about their pacing that makes me want to go back and just leap of faith midair through that ropes course rather than read another panel of their work, because none of it makes sense or interests me. But that's just me. I'm just one person. Okay, let's continue. And next week we have the Marvel Pride book. Oh boy. Okay, now we get to Doctor Strange of Asgard. Nobody's doing it like Carlos Mongo and Espen Grutengern inside of this book. And once again, I come to you with my hands out in questioning, saying, why are we getting these fugly GF Shaw covers when the interior art looks like this? And I like Jeff Shaw. Jeff Shaw, sorry. I like Jeff Shaw. He's incredible in Red Hulk. We're going to talk about it later. But come on! Look at these interiors. I love this book so much, and it's getting into broken record territory for me because I love it for the same thing every time, but I liked this one in specific because it wasn't just about street level Asgard, and it wasn't just about how Doctor Strange is kind of neurodivergent and has trouble focusing on any one thing, but it's combining both of those things into him unraveling this murder mystery. It takes him from the streets of Asgard back to the Sanctum Sanctorum. Clea is like, okay, honey, but I'm kind of in the middle of vanquishing some things right now, so could you please speed it along? There's twists, there's turns, there's Sherlock Holmesing, and it is so almost oppressively gorgeous. This is the best Carlos Mango's art has ever looked. Ever looked. And I'm just obsessed with it. And if you're not reading this series, I don't know what you're doing with your life, because it is one of the best comic books in Marvel. Derek Landy, I keep telling you, he's the next Jed MacKay. You just wait. I am going to be proven right in the long run. He is one of these Marvel writers who really understands how to make every issue thrilling and put together like a shocking plot twist drop in issue 4 or 5 of these 5-issue miniseries he's getting. It is a matter of time before he is one of the big writers at Marvel. And I'm going to keep telling you until you start paying attention. James Abel says, Doctor Strange of Asgard, very good issue. Reminds me of an Agatha Christie mystery thriller. I agree. I was vaguely interested in the look of this dragon grit, but then I could not find it online, so I moved on with my life. However, I would just like to express to you how much I love you all and the hard work that I do for you all, because I found this comic book that was on the League of Comic Book Geeks release list. It's called Dynasonic Sound of Strength. It was a Marvel cross-promotional comic with a diabetes management technology called the Omnipod. I mean, something we would all love as Omnibus fans, right? Why would we not support that? Written by Paul Allor with art from Alberto Jimenez Albuquerque, colors from Larry Molinar, and letters from Joe Sabino. So we're going to talk about this comic book. If you Google Dynasonic Sound of Strength, you will find it. It's on Marvel Unlimited, but you can't get to it from Marvel Unlimited. And it is for free, but you have to just Google it. So it's actually really interesting. This is crazy. This is crazy. So there's this young girl who wants to be like this Tony Stark type inventor, and she has type 1 diabetes, and she just finds that managing, I know this is just an advertisement for this Omnipod, but I read the comic, it was interesting. I don't know what you want me to say. So she finds that her insulin management is getting in the way of maybe being the next Tony Stark in a couple of different ways, right? She's got to remember to do it. And then when she forgets to do it, her mood is up and down, her energy is up and down, her thoughts are scattered. And so she very early in the book gets this Omnipod thing, which I guess it's like a temporary installed medical device that like secretes the insulin, but it doesn't have tubes in it. It must just do it like through skin. I don't know. I didn't get all the details there, but it happens very quickly. And then it kind of just contrasts with like, okay, so here's a character who now is not being distracted by their chronic illness as they face off against despair and actually can follow through with their experimentation. And I thought it was actually like a really great comic about how chronic conditions are real, and the lack of equity that the people with the chronic conditions have are not just the lack of equity of like, oh, I can't have a sugary drink, but it's focus problems. It's the ability to stick with things. This is one of the comics that made me really think about that kind of like sticking with things versus taking a leap of faith. Because sometimes in your personal life, you have to kind of take a leap of faith to change something. Like if you could have more energy, maybe if you're exercising more, you do need to change something about your diet because it's not good for your health. You do need to get a different job somehow because the current job is killing you. And then once you unlock whatever that thing is, it's like, oh my gosh, I do have as many hours in my day as Beyonce. Like I can do all these amazing things, but I had to unlock it by like finding the fix. And not everybody can have that fix be a prescripted medical device that they can just stick on their arm and help them with their insulin management. But I thought as allegories for that go, it like actually really hit for me. So good job, Paul Aller. I love Paul Aller. They write really good comics all the time. They're also writing that Marvel Rivals comic, but like for a medical device advertisement comic that is now getting free advertisement from me on this YouTube channel. Not paid though. Don't flag me. This is not paid. This is just me speaking from the heart. How have we been talking about this for 3 minutes? I don't know. Anyway, so, and she has a really cool fight to spare, and the art was really, really good. So I did read Endless Night. This is kind of like a sort of a mini event from Mad Cave of their Underworld London verse, all written by Mark London. Art here from Tom Darenick with colors from Juancho Velez and letters from Simon Bullen. So Mark London has been writing a number of these different series all around the Mad Cave universe, including Exit City, which 2 of these characters are from, and I really, really liked. And this brings them all together in Exit City, which is this kind of extra legal, outside of the contiguous U.S. city off the coast of California where their laws are a little bit looser, and it brings them all into one plot. The first thing I want to talk about is Tom Darenick's art, and we had him on Flash Gordon, also from Mad Cave, a couple weeks ago. He can do such well-shaded, deep, specific art, but it feels like he gets so rushed through an issue, and like as the issue goes on, his characters get like spindlier and gawkier until finally like there's barely even a face on some of these characters. It feels like their face is like wax and it's sliding off. So that's never fun. But the other thing is, this has so many characters from so many different parts of this Londonverse. And again, one of my big pet peeves, it doesn't really introduce them. And I've read all their books, and I've read all their books pretty recently. I remember who they are, I remember what they do, I remember where they came from. And even still, I kind of was like, I really could use a refresher about why these people are on Exit City. And I like people have faith in their readers. Like I get not everybody's me reading 50 comic book issues a week, and some people don't need as many recaps as me. But I think if you're at a small publisher and you've been writing a series of possibly little read series, and not everybody who read every series is reading every other series, and then you're bringing it together all into one, you just gotta give the readers some hints. And I think Valiant is a comic book company that always did good at that, even though they had a lot of readers every month. When I got to a Valiant event, if I had not been reading Harbinger or Rye or something, it always caught me up. And I just think that this comic struggles with that. That said, it was an interesting story about this kind of deadly artifact that's being used to maybe take out this one informant guy, and how everybody is now scrambling to save him or get the artifact or figure out who deployed the artifact. And I will keep reading it, but I just think for a first issue of like an eventy kind of series, it just didn't quite do the trick for me. And also Darenick's art, again, inconsistent. Fantastic Four Into the Depths is a Marvel Infinity comic available on Marvel Unlimited, and this is written by Matt Groom, who I've been really enjoying lately, with art from Eric Gatzbar, colors from Israel Silva, and letters from Joe Sabino. quite an A-team on this book. The thing that didn't really work for me here is that, so the Fantastic Four are like trying to investigate this strange frequency thing that's happening, and this scientist came to them to talk to them about it, but it seems like this is a book that's kind of just going to cycle through some guest stars that are MCU friendly in order to tell that story, and it uses Scarlet Witch here in a way that is, I mean, it does acknowledge her continuity, but it just didn't feel very Scarlet Witchy. It felt like, okay, well, it's got to be your Scarlet Witch, and Strange in the Asgards use Scarlet Witch, when in reality, it felt like it would have made much more sense for this character role to be played by Dr. Voodoo. But the art was good. It's a fine Fantastic Four adventure. And I realize that we're just getting some things out there because the movie's happening, but it's fine. I don't really think there's a whole lot else to say about it other than that. Which brings us to something, I don't know if I'm going to start the timer here because I have multiple issues to talk through, and this is Rob Guillory's Farmhand. So this is a comic I started reading back in 2018. I read it in 2018, 2019, and when it went on its first hiatus, I dropped off, and I didn't realize it had come back, and now it is into its final arc. So I have 3 big catch-up books today. I'm going to try, I guess I'm going to do it with the timer. I'm going to try to first explain the plot of the book and the initial arcs of the book, and then we're going to catch up on the issues that have already come out this year that I didn't get a chance to talk about, and then finally I'll talk about the issue that came out this week. So the concept of Farmhand is that it's about a father and a son who are estranged. The son has gone off and made his own career, I think as an artist, but it's not going so well. And so he and his wife and their 2 kids pack up and literally move back to the farm, or at least the hometown where their father's farm is. But in the meantime, their father has turned the farm into big business, a big enough business that it's kind of its own theme park in a way, because it's not only a farm, but it's also the source of this genetic engineering and genetic research that is enabling them to grow plant-based transplants for people, organs, limbs, nervous system structure, and it's keeping people alive. So we start out with this kind of heightened reality of this plant-based biological transplant science, but also this tension between the father and the son that we don't really fully understand. Like, why do they seem to have so much enmity between them? Meanwhile, the sister is also in the town, and she had gone through a tour with the army, and she is suffering her own problems, and she also is has suffered a, what am I trying to say? She's lost a limb, and she's kind of like resistant to the idea of her father giving her a transplant with his magical science, even though that seems like it would work great for her. So that is the stage that is set. And what's really interesting about this is it almost feels like doing something very similar to The Walking Dead, but like from way before the outbreak. Like the first 20 issues of this are basically like all the things that happened before we get into a plant zombie outbreak that totally explains where did it come from, what are the interpersonal conflicts that led to it, things that the Walking Dead TV series have kind of gone back and winked at. But this really feels like moments before disaster. It's like the lead up to this plant apocalypse. So now let's talk about some of the issues that came out this year. This is issue number 20, and this really focused on the relationship with the father and how things can be healed, but you kind of got to get everything out in the open. There's so much hurt between them about like how his mother passed away and the father's partnership with the kind of evil villain lady in this book, that like it really took all of these issues of showing their fractious relationship to get to the point where they could kind of reunite. And it was very, very satisfying to finally get there in issue 20. But then we also were playing some different things about the daughter story, because the story has been so much about the father-son relationship that she's kind of been ancillary, although actually she's often my favorite character in this book. And it really gets to show that like in this story that's about fathers and sons, and not from a gender essentialist standpoint, but just like whatever the focus of the story is, fathers and sons, fathers and daughters, aunts and uncles, whatever. Like there's always this character who's not the main character and isn't getting that amount of satisfaction and that amount of closure, but she's still a full round character. And what does that feel like when you're the character outside of the closure, outside of the plot movement, and you're looking in? And that was really interesting. But also as she's going through that, we're seeing, as I mentioned, this plant zombie outbreak like actually come to fruition. You're like, oh crap, are we going full Walking Dead now? Like, is it happening? So now we come to, I think this was this week's issue number 22. And this is created, written, and drawn by Rob Guillory. It's colors from Jean-Francois Bellieu and letters and logo by Cody Chamberlain. So in this issue, it's kind of like, it starts out really subtle. Just this mom and the kids being like, we're going to make it through it. We're going to do it. And the kid says, I was just thinking, I think I'm going to stop being so afraid of everything. And the mom tries to comfort him. Oh, you're not afraid of everything. Literally everything, Mom. Feels pretty dumb now, actually. It's like all the worst possible things have actually happened and I'm still here. Pretty crazy, huh? Which is one of the things that made me think about those leaps of faith. Like, you can't just keep being afraid of everything. But even while that's happening, this goes on to resolve this side plot, and it did need resolution. There had been this like Russian sleeper agent in the town, and we don't know if he's good or bad, and then he got kidnapped and we felt bad about it. But it's kind of like there's only 3 issues left in the series, and this spends pretty much the entire page count to resolve this one particular character. I do think that's something that we do see sometimes in these long-running indie series, whether it be Saga or Invincible, where, like, you know, the audience wants closer with the side characters. These series are great because they have such a big inclusive cast, and so sometimes we've got to spend a whole issue kind of resolving and tying up those threads. I just think with only 3 issues left, and with how big the cliffhanger in the past 2 issues have been, I kind of was like, okay, I guess we're doing this thing with this kid right now. I do think it's a really satisfying series. I think Rob Guillory really has crafted something interesting here, and it was really fun to go back to it and catch up on it. And I read a lot more than this because I think I was actually 10 issues behind. So I read a lot of Farmhand this weekend. I do think I could recommend it. It's for somebody who literally liked Walking Dead, but also liked Rob Guillory on Chew with, I think that's John Layman, right? Who did Chew? It's literally right in the middle of Walking Dead and Chew. And if you like those 2 comic books, I really think you would like Farmhand. So, Galaxy of Madness, this is the final issue of this Magdalena Visaggio series with Michael Avon Omen. I always say every week that we have it, it's hard sci-fi with a cartoonish finish. So if you like hard sci-fi about black holes and galaxy spanning quests, but you want to see it in a sort of cartoony way, this will deliver it to you, and I think it'll be really satisfying. I don't read Gotchaman, so I didn't read Gotchaman number 10. As we already mentioned, I looked around a little bit for Geek Girl, and I could not find it easy to access, so I did not read her special crossover. So now we come, and this is fascinating, to one of my Marvel picks of the week. The first time I think I've done a tie, which is Ghost Rider versus Galactus from J. Michael Straczynski, art from Juan Ferreira, letters from Travis Lanham. Now, I went into this skeptical because I have not really enjoyed a lot of these JMS issues. It feels like Marvel just needed to give him something to do because they canceled his Cap series for being incredibly bad. But this was, to me, an essential read. Like, I will be recommending this issue for years and years and years. Not only because I love Juan Ferreira's artwork, not only because his 70s Johnny Blaze Ghost Rider is so friggin' cool. And I love how it frames the issue of the Thing, like, trying to be friends with Ghost Rider, which is just, like, such a funny combination. But then we go into space and we visit Galactus. And Galactus, you know, there's the Stan Lee Galactus, like, world devourer, but there's so much other continuity of Galactus that he's the last representation of the prior universe, and that's why he hungers, and one day this universe will end and he will have a last representation of this universe. It gets talked about, I don't know where it all originated, actually. I'm not familiar with where that story began, so tell me if you know, but it does come up a lot in Fantastic Four, and it's just often presented as so big that I can't even wrap my mind around it. This issue is a perfect single issue recap of how that all works. And I love that Ghost Rider goes into space and he's like, the whole thrust of this issue is it evil? Is what Galactus does evil? Like, and the thing that gets brought up in the issue as they're having the stare down is a shark evil? Right? Like, it eats things. It's meant to eat things. It's always swimming. It's meant to always swim. Is it sinister for always swimming and eating things? Is it evil for always eating things and doing these things? Like, it doesn't, is it, right? And some of us ascribe evils to sharks, and they're the villain, and they're in Jaws, but they're just following their biological imperative. And so this issue asks, is Galactus just following his galactic biological imperative? But he is not human. He is a reasoning thing. He does have a consciousness. So he does know what he's doing causes harm. And he does seem like he doesn't really acknowledge or feel any remorse for how much harm he's causing. So can we really compare him to a shark? Fascinating question. Beautiful artwork. I could have showed you 5 times as many pages. Perfect encapsulation of Galactus's origins. This is a critical must-read Galactus issue. Anybody who ever says they like Galactus, from now until eternity, I will be telling them to read this issue. Cedric and Ellen saying I still have to read this one, but loved Captain America and Volstagg. If I love the Captain America and Volstagg, I also love the Nick Fury and Fin Fang Foom. I think it's really interesting. Like, it's kind of proving you can do anthology, but you have to just call them all #1, because this is just an anthology book. This is just a 6 issue. It could have just been called Marvel Team Up. It could have just been called Marvel Comics Presents. It's just an anthology book. But it's been, I think, now more hits than misses, which is crazy. And it's maybe selling well enough because Marvel did a bunch of number ones and it made it work. So maybe that's the state of anthology comic books in 2025. Maybe you've just got to set them out one at a time. I do see some other comments here, but they're not directly about this. So we are going to talk about them when I take the break, but I am seeing them happening. We are going to come back. So this is G.I. Joe, a real American hero. G.I. Joe is there. Of course, this is the original 1982 continuity, still written by Larry Hama here, penciled by Paul Pelletier, inked by Tony Cordos, colors from Francesco Segala, with flats from Sabrina Del Grosso and letters from Pat Brousseau. Here's what I love about this comic book. Larry Hama is such an expert plot juggler. And I love the way he just continues. It's like watching somebody braid hair. And I'm not good at braiding hair. I can braid Kid Crisis hair. Terrible braiding my own. And I love just watching him braid these plots. We have the Joes and all the Ninja Force Joes who I love. Scarlet, Jinx, Snake Eyes, all my favorites, have to go undercover in this town that Cobra completely controls. Every time we go to this town, I love it. Because it's like Cobra is like, how do you maintain all of these Vipers? And like, where do they go home after their mission? This is the kind of thing that when I was playing with G.I. Joes, I needed to know the answers to these questions, and Larry Hama answered them. So they have this whole town that's just Cobra Town, and that's where all the Vipers go and live afterwards, and the Joes go back in impersonating Vipers. But wait, that's not all. We also get Dr. Mindbender, who I thought was being tricked into submitting to having AI installed in his body from this AI partner that Cobra has. No, he's not being tricked. He's like, yeah, okay, I'll take the AI. As long as you give me enhancements, we can strike a deal, which I thought was a really fascinating beat as the Joes spy on what's happening on the island. They're like, oh no, this is bad news. And then we get the continuing subplot of Cobra Commander being in the grips of Destro and Baroness, who he just disabled, and Baroness is getting her just desserts on him as they now turn the tables on Cobra Commander. I never know if this is what Cobra Commander actually looks like. I like to think it's like this Mission Impossible wax face that he wears, and we don't actually know what he looks like. That's just what it works as a fantasy in my head. Paul Pelletier sells all this so well. It's colored incredibly well. I mean, I'm just hooked. I'm in for this month in and month out. I always enjoy it. I'm a longtime G.I. Joe fan, and I just think you do not have to have read from issue number 1. I picked this up from issue 300. It's very pickupable. If you pick this up and just binge from issue 300 to this issue, which is 17? What a fun time you'll have, because I binged, I think, to 310 or 312 to catch up earlier this year, and I just had a friggin' blast. This comic is just so much fun. I'm so happy to see Larry Hama getting his flowers, and I'm so happy to see him do bigger stuff. And I say this every time I read an issue. IDW was not getting him artists that could do stuff this big and this interesting, and I think Paul Pelletier and the other artists he's had on this book, like Chris Mooneyham, have been incredible, and they let him do big plots again. Love, love, love. I don't read Godzilla Heist. I did read the first issue. It was very cool, Ocean's 11. Then it kind of pivoted into being more of an action comic, and I found I was not as interested. I do not read Heat Seeker Exposed, a Gun Honey series from Hardcase, but I do want to point out that these covers are a little bit of a bait and switch. It's not just a titty book, but because I have read in the past, but I just can't find any interest for it right now, which brings us to Halverine by your friend, but not mine, Benjamin Percy. Drawing here is Raphael Ienco with colors from Brian Valenza and letters from Travis Lanham. Benjamin Percy, he's a fascinating character. I don't understand what he thinks these comic book characters are or why we love them, because he has Daken as a ghostwriter here, and he's like solving the mystery of this Hell Hulk and if it should be put together or not. And it's still all about the friggin' motorbikes and like him having coffee in this place with these scientists, which has nothing to do with Daken. The voiceover here is, I did it. We did it. The Project Hellfire crew. I have to admit, after so much time on my own, trying to find my way, it feels good to be around others. No, Akihiro would not say that. That is not this comic book character. We have him investigating horrific crimes and still not acknowledging that he used to be this serial killer doing these kinds of things. It's a beautiful book. Raphael Ienco's art is incredible, but I don't understand how after a first arc that was so grounded in his character and had flashes of Benjamin Percy finally giving a shit about any of the characters that he writes, which he so often doesn't seem to, I don't understand who this book is for, because guess what? It's not very Ghost Rider-y, and Daken doesn't have a huge fan base, but they exist, but it's not really appealing to them. And I just don't understand, like, who is it for? Like, if we're not getting good Ghost Rider action, and we're not getting good Wolverine action, and we're not getting good Daken action, like, who is it for other than fans of Raphael Ienco's art? I don't know. So, I mean, I guess some cool Hell Ghost Rider stuff is happening, but I just don't understand. I did read this Herbie Infinity comic on Marvel Unlimited. It is so charming. Nathan Stockman, who has drawn a lot of your favorite meme panels that show up on social media, both wrote and drew this, and it's just at a point, who knows if it's in continuity. Franklin is a little baby, maybe it fits, maybe it doesn't, but it's about Herbie just like being this cute little guy and just trying to make the Fantastic Four happy. And he like doesn't want to ask a lot of questions. He's like, I'm a robot. I should be able to take care of this. You need me to run an errand for you, Reed? Okay. You need me to extinguish a flame or be a child minding plane? Okay, I'll do it. And so then we get this little kind of nursery rhymey opening, which I would have been okay if that was the whole book because it was adorable. But then he actually gets sent to do something for Reed, and he tries so hard, and he kind of backs into some heroism along the way. I mean, it is totally adorable. If you have kids in your life that are like hyped to see the Fantastic Four movie, I don't think Marvel Universe movies are appropriate for children under 10 years old, but that's just me. If you have kids in your life that are excited for it and you want to read a Fantastic Four comic with them, this is absolutely adorable, and you absolutely can read it with them. Now we come to The Immortal Thor by Al Ewing. I am still trying to decide what I felt about this comic book. It's, of course, with Jan Bazaldua on artwork, with Matt Hollingsworth on color, and Joe Sabino's lettering. So we've been building up now for 24 issues plus like an annual and a one shot, so a few, to this idea of Thor dying, that the immortal Thor is mortal, but the idea of Thor, or any god, is immortal, and that's what makes it immortal, right? But the thing that occurred to me in this issue is that something that Al Ewing did so well on Immortal Hulk is it didn't feel like we were stuck in arcs. Like, there were arcs, but it felt like every issue was very, very significant, and it really delivered that with like those big, bold title pages, which are repeated in this book, because it kind of felt like every issue was just one distinct chapter in Hulk, and it wasn't until the very, very end of the series that it started feeling like each installment didn't have fullness on its own. This one just didn't feel like its own installment. Like, we basically see Thor resolving something that's happened for the past couple of issues, and then he doesn't die, and then he does die, or maybe he's gonna die, he's not immortal, stories are immortal. I just feel like Al Ewing for 25 issues, this series feels like it has been going on for like 100 issues. I just feel like we've lost any excitement or any like true question of if Thor is going to survive it or not. It just feels like we're going through the motions, and that's what a lot of Al Ewing's books feel like right now. I want this guy to reclaim the joy that he had previously in writing comic books, because it all just feels so dull and overworked. I do like it a little bit more than I liked it on First Contact. I do think there's something interesting going on, but for a book that's basically telegraphed from the start that this is the story of Thor dying, after 25 issues, I find that I don't particularly care if he's dying or not, and I just think it's overworked. I don't have any other way I can think to express it. I do think that Jan Bazaldua, she has her moments where her art is beautiful. She has her moments where the art is clumsy. I do think she did really well with Saphir, and I love how Matt Hollingsworth colored it. Oh boy, let me take a deep sip of water, because we're wading into the Hickman-verse with his double-sized first issue of Imperial, with Ivan Coelho and Federico Vincenti on art, Federico Blee on color, although I could have never guessed. And that's the story. Who's the letterer? Corey Petit. So there's this thing when you start reading a Jonathan Hickman Marvel comic book where he's never going to give you the thing that you thought that you wanted in that comic book. Even Fantastic Four, which probably hews the closest to the themes that already exist in the world of Fantastic Four, he's always going to give you something different, write the characters a little different, put a different twist or a vision on it. That's who he is. And I think the positive of this comic book is to take the Hulks, which nobody's really doing a whole lot with right now, and especially to take them in the context of the Planet Hulk aspect of Hulk's story, and to take this whole space, it's an unused corner of Marvel, and that's the best way to deploy Hickman. Of course, if you start him on X-Men and he's like, everybody's on the island, mutants live forever, like, that's going to rankle, and for people who've been reading 10 to 12 X-Men comic books a month, they're going to have a lot of opinions about this. But it's hard to be angry about how he's executing this, because he's not really stepping on anybody's toes creatively. Like, even this Hulk, which feels a little bit different than the Hulk that is in Philip Kennedy Johnson's book, actually not entirely, because we get this consistency where this Hulk like doesn't really want to access any of his emotions. He's just here because but he's here for an emotional reason, which is really similar to the way the Hulk is being played in Philip Kennedy Johnson's book. Even if this is a little bit different, I'm sure they're going to dovetail in some way that makes sense. It's too big of a beat to not plan. But this book addresses the Hulks. It addresses a son of Hulk. It has Amadeus Cho in it. We also see the Imperial Guard. We see Star-Lord and Nova. And I know that the Star-Lord and Nova interaction was one of the things that people got their panties all in a twist about, because these men were maybe lovers in Al Ewing's Guardians of the Galaxy. Unclear if it actually was consummated or not, but certainly there was an ongoing connection and flirtation between them. And Hickman kind of writes it here as if they're a little bit at odds, but that works fine to me. The whole point of Al Ewing's run is like, as much as they did feel a connection between the two of them, that they really didn't fully understand each other, and maybe it was magical that they kind of finally came to a connection there. But since then, we have kind of seen them on the outs for a little bit, and I don't think anything about that reads wrong to me. I also love that we saw Wiccan and Hulkling in here. It just is a really interesting story, but none of this has been about the story. So the story is a flat-out murder mystery. Hulk's son on the planet Sakaar is killed, but not in the way you would expect somebody to die on the planet Sakaar. And they discover that actually throughout the intergalactic area of Marvel, there are a lot of rulers that are being killed, and that it's all under similar suspicious circumstances. And it's kind of like, on one hand, we're getting this message of like, this is an internal matter, we'll just investigate it. But on the other hand, there's these characters who this is taking away their loved ones. And so it's doing this really interesting kind of Games of Thrones thing, although I think that's like an overused trope where it's saying like, oh, there's big intergalactic things happening, and then we go down to the son or the father or the sister or the brother of that person who died, and we find out just how personal it is. And it's a really cool mystery. It seems like we're going to pin it on one faction in this intergalactic world, but of course that can't possibly be the case. The art is incredible. I couldn't even tell the switch between Ivan Coelho and Federico Vincenti, and I don't know that they have very similar styles. I thought I would always be able to point out a Vincenti page to you, because I got so used to seeing his art on, I forget if he was on Miles Morales or Moon Knight or both, but no, like, and Federico Blee, the colors are spectacular. This is one of the best issues of color I've ever seen from Federico Blee. This is high quality, highly executed Marvel comics in a space that there's so much storytelling to tell. And if you think about that cosmic space, like, has anybody done anything great with it since Abnett and Lanning before 2012? Like, yeah, we've had a lot of good Guardians series since then, and Donny Cates kind of like had a cosmic Marvel thing going between his Guardians of the Galaxy and his Thanos and his Silver Surfer. There was like a little bit of a cosmic story, but we haven't really dealt with a cosmic story on the scale of civilizations since like Annihilation Conquest and like Annihilators. And this just feels like finally we're dealing with this whole untapped space civilization saga, and I think Hickman is the perfect person to do it. So I actually really liked it. I really liked it. And I did not like Gods last year. I think sometimes Hicksmen is when he does X-Men. Hicksmen swings and misses for me, but I just was so interested in it. One Wheelchair X saying it was interesting. The whole mystery aspect is exciting. I'm curious how Wiccan and Hulkling will play into this, along with Deathbird, Zandra, and however Xavier and Landra get involved. And we already have had it tipped that they will. Ahmad Russell, hello, I don't think I've said hi to you yet. Imperial One I liked it a lot. Usually I trade weight, but I'm picking this up in Signals. James the Medium Answer was waiting to see what I would say about this. And Jamie's 347 also did not like how Star-Lord seemed so chummy with his dad. Yeah, that was, if there's one thing that was kind of like, oh, I don't know if this makes perfect sense based on where we last left them, it was that Star-Lord seemed to have a pretty good relationship with his father here, but I think that was just necessary for the plot, and I am willing to excuse it because I think the rest of this is really good. It was really good. I didn't love it. It wasn't my pick of the week. I'm willing to see how it develops, but it was executed to a high standard. I don't read Jim Henson's Labyrinth, which is just a recap of the movie. I keep telling myself I'm going to catch up on it, and I see how short I am on time. I'm like, no thanks. I dropped the JSA by Jeff Lemire, although this was a standalone Golden Age issue, so I was actually really tempted to read it. I'm like, no, you just dropped it one issue ago. Stay strong. However, I did read Jump Scare. Now, this issue, much like last issue, was very action-focused. Script by Cullen Bunn, art from Danny Luckert, who is just a revelation, coloring himself, and letters from Jim Campbell. So a lot of this is just action, and it's cool. It looks so great. I mean, there, again, is no other comic book out there that looks like this. It is totally insane, incredible. But the really interesting subtext in this action that plays out and that I found myself very attracted to was this idea that Jumpscare is a monster. She happens to be a monster that has retained her human form, and her power is that she can manifest things from horror movies to use as her weapons. But like, that's scary. She's a serial killer, right? And she could be out there killing people, but instead she's out there killing other monsters. But like, she's a fundamentally terrifying character. And in this moment, she's been captured by this, I forget what they're called, but the scary bad guys who basically want to gather all of the people who've been touched by the monster gene and like kill them and sacrifice them to release their eldritch god. And she has this moment of realization of like, oh, we're all monsters. And I just think that is such an interesting beat because it's being played out at the same time that she's rescuing her sister, who is not a monster. And we get the sister saying, I knew you'd come for me. I knew you wouldn't let me die here. I knew you wouldn't let the monsters get me, as she turns and looks over her shoulder at all the monsters. But in that moment, Jumpscare is like, I am one of the monsters. So even though this was really mostly an action issue, Cullen Bunn so deftly sews in all of those other beats. And I just felt that, like, I kind of read it once quick. And then when I got to the end, I was like, oh, that really was interesting. And then I went back through and I read it again. And I was just like so engaged with it. I don't know. And then again, amazing action and nobody. I mean, I have so many favorite artists that I've discovered this year. Fareed Karami, high on that list. Dev Pramalik on Moon Knight, so high on that list. I'm clearly addicted to Rafa Sandoval, but that already existed. But I don't know, man. Danny Luckert has got something really, really special here. And I would have buy anything he would draw. I mean, it's just so insane, especially him coloring himself, just the layouts, the way he draws the facial features. I just can't think of anybody else who's doing this. So I continue to love this series. It's one of my top 12 of the year. I urge you, if you like superheroes and you like monster stuff and you want to see a superhero doing monster stuff, this is the book for you. Now we come to Justice League, the Atom Project, the final issue number 6 of this series. It was my pick of the week going into the week. I liked it a lot. It just was that Superman, I mean, it was splitting hairs, but I just think Superman was a little bit more interesting. But here's the thing that was so great about this. This is happening, and it gives very good editorial notes on it happening right at the same time as the beginning of the We Are Yesterday crossover that's currently happening between Justice League Unlimited and World's Finest. And this has the Captain Atom and one of the Atoms bumping up against the Legion of Doom from there, and they are so scary here. Mike Perkins draws the hell out of them, colored by Adriano Lucas, and he makes them like sinister, frightening, terrifying. And not only the way they look in the art, but the way that Ryan Parrott and John Ridley write them makes them really seem menacing here. And like, this is the first time in this whole sequence of stories about these characters and about this We Are Yesterday plot that I was like, oh wow, the Justice League's in trouble. Mark Waid has never communicated that to me on his side of the book. This communicated to me, and it really wound up being very interesting because it kind of shows you that the end of this story of Captain Atom that starts right after Absolute Power kind of is the bridge from Absolute Power to We Are Yesterday, and it shows us in a way how we're going to move forward in the DC universe. So I just think this was so clever. Like, what an interesting way to do a 6-issue side series to get some characters that we don't get to see enough out on the board and visible to everybody, but also to put some connective tissue and some sinew in between these two Mark Waid stories in a way that Mark Waid absolutely had to consult on and be a part of, or else it just wouldn't have worked. I just really love this. I think this issue was so much more interesting and so much scarier and cooler than anything happening in We Are Yesterday. And it kind of sets up We Are Yesterday better than the actual book set it up. And we get a really interesting status quo change, but also kind of the same for Captain Atom at the end that makes me interested to see him pop up again in Justice League. Just really well done. And I love that I can go forward and recommend this. Part of me, though, was like, would I recommend it? Like, if somebody who just liked Captain Atom or the Atom was like, should I read that series? I don't know if I guess I would recommend it to them, but I don't know how much it gets into their personality. Maybe it does. But it's also if somebody was just reading like, oh, I want to get to President DC. I read Absolute Power. What should I read next? I'd be like, ooh, read this next. And then you'll understand where we are. Like, it's such a good epilogue to Absolute Power, I guess is what I'm saying. I didn't read Justice League versus Godzilla versus Kong 2, number 1. I saw so many ads for the first series of this and so many excerpts of it in the back of so many comics that I feel like I've read it, even though I've only ever read 2 pages of it. We know I'm not a kaiju person. I mean, it looked really interesting. I do love Christian Duce's art so much. So maybe in a future week, I'll catch up on the first series and see if I'm interested in the second series. I just had so many things catching up this week that I didn't have any more brain to catch up. And speaking of not having any more, we have reached the end of the J's, which means I get to take a breather and talk to you for a couple of minutes, and then we press on because we have so many more comics to talk about. And I saw some really interesting comments, so I want to get back to those. Oh, sorry. I mean, that was an interesting comic, but we already saw that one. So let me scroll back up to somewhere around where I stopped catching everything. And if you have a couple questions for me, feel free to ask, but I do want to kind of move on to the comics as well. So we're going to try to do our best to do both. Lance McNair, I forget if I got this one at the beginning, but this is about where we left off, saying, I learned to swim in college course back in 2013, loved it, and haven't been back in the pool since. That's really interesting to me. And I don't say this with any kind of judgment or prejudice, because I'll get there. When people never learn to swim as kids, and I know that that is particularly a thing, I know it to be like a trope and a real thing in the African-American community, but also like people who never learned how to ride a bike as a kid, and then you've got to like do this thing that everybody takes for granted that kids know how to do when you're an adult, but any kind of thing like that, I just think is really interesting. Like, I never learned how to blow bubbles with gum. I never learned how to hopscotch. Like, we treat all of these things, and especially like swimming and bike riding, like they're just the universal part of the childhood experience. But then as adults, you're like afraid to say like, ooh, I don't know how. And for me, that's part of that whole leap of faith thing. There's a whole other part of that moment of crisis that I never did, of like, I had never moved my body until 2010. All of my exercise came from walking home after work and being on stage, like doing shows, which, you know, was high effort. But I'd never done any working out or any lifting weights or any running or yoga, anything, nothing. Because I just thought it was for somebody other than me. And I had never learned as a kid to like moving my body because I was this weird, spindly little nerd, and I didn't, gym class was not for me. Exercise didn't seem like it was for me. And so I remember when I first went to yoga, because my office building built a gym and all my friends were doing it. And I was like, all right, I'll go with you at lunch one day. I just did it. And I was like, whoa, like this feels so good for my body. And could this be for me? It doesn't feel like it should be for me because I've always been told that I'm just not sporty and I'm not athletic and I'm not strong. And to be all those things, I would have to be super masculine, which I knew even at that point that I didn't want to be. And I was like, wait, so there's a way that I can be strong and flexible, and it's not like about like being like big and muscular and bulky. And I just had this like galaxy brain moment. So I'm all for doing the thing as a college student, as an adult, that you never got to do as a kid or kind of never learned was for you as a kid. I think that's really, 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 really important to do. So I'm glad you reminded me to think about that part of the moment of crisis that I didn't wind up talking about. Bunkmaster saying, not much for swimming, but I've been back on a running kick after breaking my toe. Oh, it's the worst. A few years ago, right at the beginning of the pandemic, broke this finger, and it's on my fretting hand, and it's forever changed how I played guitar, and that's the worst thing I could possibly imagine. I can imagine worse things happening in life. Certainly break my finger isn't the worst, but like, I'm very, very defensive of my hand. So I completely understand having broken a toe, and I did have a fractured toe at one point too, because I have a couch from hell. I hate it so much, but there's not a lot of couch choices here in New Zealand, so it fits the space really well, but it has these legs that like you will break your toe on it you just look at the couch and the leg walks across the room and just kicks you in the toe and breaks your toe. I know I should like have some kind of art project where I like craft some little bumper around them or something, because I've hurt and sprained and broken toes on it so many times now, but I just hate it. So anyway, I feel you is my message there. Okay, we're still gonna move. I think I missed this originally. Absolute Green Lantern Girl Angel saying the evergreen gold rush begins. Feel sorry for Hal. Joe is threatening to control his power when he obviously doesn't know how. At least the Blue Devil Funko made it out of town safely. That was a funny beat. How they were like, we need something gold plated, and he's like, I've got this gold Blue Devil Funko. Like, what a strange little beat. Do hate that book though. And Novarg, no worries at all. I think we're all cool there. Superjob saying, yeah, that Green Lantern book does kind of look like the average, I would say the below average Zenoscope comic. I think Zenoscope does a better job with faces than we were seeing there. White Wolf Library saying goodbye. His 3-month-old daughter is awake, so catching the replay later. Yeah, I don't know if these tones are soothing. You got to do that. You got to have the white noise. I did a lot of white noise on my phone, or brown noise or pink noise in those early child napping months. And we know that if I make crazy vacuum sounds, all of my makeup will fall at my face. So we're going to not do that. Okay, let's continue to see who else has chimed in that we did not get to talk to at the time. Lance McNair saying, in random movie tidbits, Scarlett Johansson just became the highest grossing actor of all time after Jurassic World Rebirth. I mean, she's been in the Marvel movies. What else has she been in? She's been in a lot of great movies, but what I feel like there's other people who've been in more franchises than her. Is she in another franchise? She's not in like Hunger Games or like evil transphobic wizard movies. I don't know. I mean, I believe you. Good for her. I remember first seeing her on screen in Ghost World back in the 90s. She's a fantastic actress and she can do action. And I mean, a lot of people like her because she's hot, but she also conveys a lot in the face. And she also picks interesting movies a lot of the times. I look forward to her winning an Academy Award at some point. I don't think it should ever be a reward for just living long enough, but I do think she's an incredible actor. And I think people forget that because she does these big grossing movies, but she's actually a very, very incredible actor. Okay. Bunk saying, Armor Wars is Coheed and Cambria. Haven't read the new arc, but the early stuff is rough. I want to get through a full read through, and those early ones have had me put it down a few times. Okay, well, now I know, and knowing is half the battle. Still scrolling down. Armory Wars, no thank you Wars, says Reaper XC. Okay, let's see. Really, most of you were talking mostly about the books, which was good. Logan Wayne saying, I've heard that the Midnighter and Apollo story in this was awful, but the rest was really good. Well, again, it was just a weird take on these heroes. I get that it was like, oh, they thought they got what they wished for, but what they wished for wasn't great. And it's kind of like, Midnighter wishes he can kill everyone indiscriminately, which is what he wishes he could do. And Apollo wishes that Midnighter wouldn't murder anymore. And so he basically kills indiscriminately, but everybody just turns into a poof of confetti. So they both get what they want, which is like a funny beat. I actually like that one better than some of the other stories because at least it played the beat of like, oh, you both thought you wanted this thing, but like actually wishes never come true the way you want to. Whereas a lot of the other ones kind of seemed like people's lives would have been better other ways, which seems like a really weird story to tell about a bunch of characters who in many of their cases are just recently out to be like, oh, your life could have been way better if you made this choice earlier, asshole, which was like seemed really at odds with the Jenny Blake story in the background. By the way, I know I don't do the smash the like button a lot, but let me just give my scientific explanation. When a higher percentage of viewers have hit the like button, YouTube's algorithm knows to serve the video more. And we do get people coming in being like, whoa, I'm seeing you for the first time. And YouTube knows that some people watch this channel, watch Omnibog's Vault, watch Near Mint Condition. And so like the more you like this video helps those people who we all know, and some of our friends of mine and ours know that I'm doing these videos too. So it does really help that you like the video. It's not just a vanity thing, especially for me as a channel that's like still growing and who has these friends who have much bigger channels. It really just helps YouTube to know to tell them to watch this. So it is really, really good. Okay, AMA from Lance McNair. Curious on my thoughts on a series such as Star Wars or X-Men at the beginning before fan expectations have set in versus once the lore is established and has become a brand. Well, it's hard to even talk about now because they are all brands. And like, I think we've seen that happen in the modern day with some series that have gotten big enough, largely by Robert Kirkman, because he's the one that's doing it, but even with Saga. Like, I just think that there's always the danger of the weight of expectations, and once your book has a way that it does things, or a way that people likes the characters to be written, it's this constant push-pull of like, do you just serve the fans, or are you serving the characters? And I think sometimes, and we'll get to this actually in the next book that I'm going to talk about, I think sometimes the creator just serves themselves, which is their prerogative. They're creating these things that I couldn't create. It's really hard to do. But sometimes I think in serving themselves, sometimes it does disservice to the fans and the characters. So it's like X-Men fans at this point, X-Men is so old and such a rich, diverse story that there's no X-Men book that's going to make everybody happy. Hoxpox didn't make everybody happy. From the Ashes isn't making everybody happy. But I do think that if you stay true to showcasing the characters and what's great about the characters, even when somebody hates the book, they can at least appreciate that the characters are getting used. And I think that that's like Star Wars, I think, tends to be better at that, because even if the Star Wars stories are terrible, the editorial and the plot team at Lucasfilm inside of Disney kind of like knows how to make good use of the characters, and they know that even if the story is bad, people will keep buying it and keep appreciating it because at least the characters are being used, and like they know that they can get away with that. But continuing your comment, Lance said, it's interesting how sometimes something can strike in such a way that it becomes a massive IP, but then there's the added pressure to keep the train running in a way that's often unfulfilling. And to me, that goes back to the moment of crisis, right? Sometimes it's great to just keep doing the thing that you were doing. Sometimes people just want you to keep doing the thing you're doing. And I've been speaking French for 30 years, so it's really comfortable and fun for me to speak French. But sometimes you need a hoxpox. Sometimes you need to take a midair leap and not know if you're going to make it to the next floating platform. And I think to keep these IPs vibrant, you need the leap sometimes. And that's like in Star Wars, Last Jedi was a leap. I personally don't like it for very different reasons. Other people don't like it, as we have covered. But it was a big leap. And I think to keep these brands alive, you need the occasional Last Jedi. You need the occasional, Hoxpox. You even need what Zeb Wells did in Spider-Man. It might not hit, but sometimes you just have to jump and see how it goes. Okay. A lot of dissent about if Vita Ayla's New Mutants was good or not, which I think that's a really interesting question. Funkmaster B, it's a thing. You've been on this whole show. You're on a long run, or you're recovering from your run. Usually you're not around in these middle hours. Nobody has as many hours as Beyonce. That woman has a time turner and also nannies and assistants. And that is true. Like, when we look at rich and famous people, we're like, oh, I wish I could do as much as Beyonce. It's like, okay, but they've got all the money in the world. So when's the last time Beyonce had to spend 3 hours cooking a meal that she didn't feel like cooking? Because I do that several nights a week, right? Last week while family was here, we usually cook 6 nights a week. Sometimes just 5, but 6. And so that's a lot of cook time and a lot of cleaning up time. And with family here, just because they have different dietary needs than us and different tastes than us, we ordered out twice in the same week, which I usually order out twice in a year. That's how much I cook. And it was amazing because it was like, oh my gosh, I can just not do anything right up until 6 o'clock and then eat dinner. Like, I'm not trapped in the kitchen for 90 minutes. And then after dinner, all this stuff just gets recycled and I can there's time to play a video game. I cannot tell you the last time I played a video game. Then yesterday, while I was doing all this comic reading, I kept being like, I kind of want to go downstairs because do you know what? All of the Final Fantasies are on sale on Switch right now. And I already had the 1 to 6 collection, but all the other ones were on sale. So I just bought them all. Some of them are like $7. I was like, you know what? Let's just bank it. I can just play them whenever. And I just had this moment yesterday of like, nobody's going to read all the comics for me. Beyonce needs to come to my house and read these comics for me. I love reading comics, but I was like, oh wow, I actually had time to play video games because this hour of my day that is usually spoken for with dinner was not spoken for, and I got to do something fun. And so that's that's real. I mean, we all have that in our lives, and we've talked about being time poor and being overly busy and the busyness trap in past episodes of this before, but that's a real thing. And it just feels so good when you actually free up some time that wasn't freed before. So I'm always saying, find that time. Anytime you can crash the schedule, make a thing simpler, but you've also got to balance that with money. And you've also got to balance that with being healthy. I would not be happy getting takeout every day. And also, I'm not rich, and takeout in Wellington is crazy expensive because we have a living wage here. So I couldn't possibly afford to do takeout even once a week. I would be in the poorhouse. There would be no comic books. I wouldn't even be able to buy groceries if I was doing takeout once a week. So it's always this balance. And we have to remind ourselves that the Beyoncés of the world, because of the money they have and because of the ability they have to opt out of certain things, they do really have more hours in their day than we do. But it's always great when we can find more hours in our day. Lance McNair has never read or watched any Walking Dead. I watched the first season of the show. It was too cynical for me. We know I don't love cynical media. And then I think I read the first 24 issues of the comic book. It just felt like it was a big enough cultural phenomenon in comics, which is a medium that I love and espouse I love for all the time, that I should be aware of it. So I read a portion and then I was like, that's fine. We already talked about that one. Bunk saying, what I'm talking about taking care of side characters as the main story wraps up is one of the things I loved about how Fables handled the last story of Sets as it approached 150. Yeah, I think it's just a very specific art that indie comics has that big 2 comics don't have to do because those characters will live on, right? That series wants to say goodbye to that character, but that character is going to get picked up by something else at some point. Whereas in indie comics, those creators have made those characters themselves and love those characters and know that nobody else is going to necessarily say goodbye to them. And so they've got to find the panel space to do it. And I think that's really, really interesting. Super job joking that still hoping Marvel will announce that Peter Parker Spider Titties book that I suggested last week. Well, I mean, we got another Spider-Man book to talk about today. Maybe that will be the one. And then there was a lot of excitement about Imperial. And now George Chimchamov is late to the party. Lance McNair and Logan Wayne having a very interesting conversation that I'm not going to expose to everyone necessarily. But wait, there's another AMA. As a child of the 80s and 90s, where a Prince kid or an MJ kid, what's my favorite song and album from both? Wow. Talk about something that could be its own stream. Well, first I'll say, I'm a child of every kind of music. As we've established, I listen to music back to the 30s. So there's always that either or. I feel like in every decade there's some do you like, Elvis or the Beach Boys? I don't know who the either or. Oh, I guess it's Elvis or Johnny Cash. That's hard for me. I think Johnny Cash. Then there's Beatles or the Rolling Stones. Beatles. I don't think the Rolling Stones are interesting in the slightest. I think they have 3 good songs. Then with Prince and Michael Jackson, I do think you can like both. I'm a bigger Michael Jackson fan just because I grew up on Michael Jackson and I just know every Michael Jackson song. But I do have every Prince record up until 2000. I love Prince. I just think Prince's singles were great. And we all know the singles. We all know I Want to Be Your Lover. We all know Raspberry Beret. We all know Crazy. We all know Bat Dance. But the Prince albums are so interesting, and I think he's more of an albums artist. The thing with Michael Jackson is so many of the songs on the albums became the singles that, like, you kind of know the whole album already. That's not usually the case with Prince. There's so much more to hear. So, like, Michael Jackson, favorite song, I mean, I love stuff on Off the Wall so much. I mean, I love PYT. I love Human Nature. I love Don't Stop Till You Get Enough. I love... I want to be starting something. I'm a big fan of Off the Wall and Thriller. I still like newer Michael Jackson after that, but that's for me the perfection zone. Prince. So favorite album, probably Off the Wall. Prince. I don't know if I could just name a single favorite song of Prince. I've been working my way through listening to all of his albums, and things get so intriguing. In 1986 and 1987, he's got that album that got shelved that we later heard and was released, and there's so much interesting stuff in there. I don't know if I can commit to a favorite Prince song yet. I have to bring up my iTunes and like scroll through. But what is the one? Something Dream? It's not Dream Theater. There's some album with the name Dream in it that didn't get released at the time and then got later released, and I really find that album very, very interesting. Okay, sorry, we went a long side tangent. We've also got an adult bike learner here in Bunkmaster. Edwin Billiot, don't mind me asking if I've never heard me mention what brought me to New Zealand. This comes up from time to time. We knew we were going to move, and there was a job opportunity. It almost was Canada. I really almost put all this French speaking to good use. But now here, je ne parle pas français. I speak English, except for I cannot do a New Zealand accent, and that is why we are in New Zealand. Jamie C. can't stand running. I do truly hate it more than anything else on the planet, but I still do it. But I'm a rock climber, although I haven't been out on a real rock for a while since I had major surgery 18 months ago. Really need to get back to it. Wow. And that's so hard when there's a thing you love, and whatever it is, you have surgery, you break your toe, you are on vocal rest and can't sing. It's so hard to be away from that thing that gives you life and makes you happy. So I really hope you do get back to it. And you would probably love this crazy ropes course that I did, because it seemed like the rock climber guy was having a great time. Luis Martinez, this is what I need to feel complete again. A crisis live. This week has been horrible for me. Oh no, I'm so sorry to hear that. I had a good week, so please take my good week vibes and have them be your vibes, and try to enjoy that. D. Marcel has counted every time that he's caught a live stream. This is number 6. And guess what? There's going to be at least one more this week. I am promising you. I am vowing. There's going to be at least one more. Samantha Jane is on her 10K run today. Kia ora to you, Samantha Jane. Just wanted to say good morning, and we'll watch the replay later. Okay. And Tyler Smith. Hey. Oh, we're going to talk. If this is the Tyler I'm thinking it is, and I think it is, I'm about to talk about some really, really great lettering. Okay. And I think we got to move on. Oh my gosh. People are still talking and saying amazing, amazing things, including Johnny Cash or Elvis is a difficult choice for me. Yeah, I would agree with that. Okay. Fun favorite, actually secret. I love secret Prince songs when he just turns up on somebody's album or he writes something for them. I mean, Prince wrote Manic Monday. He wrote and originally performed Nothing Compares to, which Sinead O'Connor made famous. He wrote and performs on a song called Love Song by Madonna on Like a Prayer, which I absolutely love. One of the truly weirdest Madonna songs of all time. He wrote some songs during the New Power Generation era on Paula Abdul's Spellbound, an album that is not good, but I still really love. So actually a lot of my favorite Prince songs are songs that he wrote for other people. I mean, his songs are incredible, but his ability to write for the female voice was just incredible. He was an amazing, amazing songwriter. Okay, now we got to get back to the comics. I mean, we could have a music stream. Maybe one day when I'm all caught up, we could do it, but we have to get back to the comics. And I get to talk about a comic here that I am so excited to talk about. Oh my gosh, but I already scrolled to the end of this PDF and I got to get all the way back to the beginning. Okay, so I just have to press this button 90 more times and then we'll be there. Okay, so in terms of streaming this week, see, I'm going to easily pivot to that. I'm going to be jamming on comics, talking about more. If you like that music chat, that's what we do. We also just have a totally chill hangout. That's on Omnidog's Vault. I know many of you are Omnidog fans. He's one of my favorite people to hang out with online, and we'll be there with my friend Freddie as well. And that is on Tuesday night. I believe it is at 6 o'clock Eastern time. And we're going to try to have some fun this week and talk about things that we remember my old show, Shelve, Store, or Sell, that I used to do. We're going to kind of try to do that, which Shelve, Store, or Sell, of course, was always my clever alliterative variation on F, Marry, Kill. And so we're going to try to do a little bit of that this week. We did not get the Marvel solicits because they were on vacation for the 4th of July, I think. So there may be a secret Marvel solicit show as soon as Omar gets them in New Condition this week, but I may or may not be on it because I have a pretty busy week. So maybe I'll be on that, maybe not. Kind of depends on when the solicits get here and what day of the week it is. Okay, let us continue our journey through the back half of these comic books. with Kaya. So I'm going to do the same thing on Kaya that I did on Farmhand, which is take 1 minute to catch you up, 1 minute to talk about the issues so far this year, and 1 minute for this week's issues. This book may be my second favorite comic of all time, or maybe third behind Lazarus. And what's crazy is the other one is in this week. This comic is about a boy and a girl, a brother and a sister, who are orphaned due to the robots that are overrunning humanity, and they may be the last two humans left. We haven't seen any other humans. We've seen kind of mutated animals, we've seen lizard people, we haven't seen any other humans. And so they're on this quest where they're kind of both the chosen one in an interesting way, which I think is a really interesting take on it, where the girl, Kaya, has this super magical arm that she got from some arcane people known as the Black Wizards that we've never met to this point. And she can kind of has the power to destroy anything. So she's kind of this like physical superhero. And then her younger brother, Jin, who may or may not be the golden child, who may reignite the spark that saves humanity from the brink of extinction. But what does that mean? And when you're just this like 10-year-old kid, what does it mean to be the golden child? And everybody just sees you and you're like, you could save the world. You're like, I'm just this kid, but I believe that I'm magic. And then your older sister who's supposed to be protecting you doesn't even fully believe that. So what's really great about the first, I would say 16 issues of this, 18 issues of this, which are peerless. I mean, issue after issue of 4.5 or 5 out of 5 comic books is they're gorgeous. And it's a great kids on an adventure book in a fantasy setting. There's so much cool stuff. And now we're going to talk about some of the issues so far this year, which will get me to talk about some of the themes. So one of the really interesting things is they have been on their own for so long. And then towards the end of last year's arc, 'cause this is a regular monthly comic book, it only takes an occasional skip month, they met up with this guy who claims to be a demigod, but really Kaya does not trust him. But this is the first time that we've had any kind of adult or father figure associated with these orphan kids. And so it really changed the tone of the book. And I had a lot of trouble with it at first because not only was he introduced and it changed the tone of the book, but also there was this arc where they're in this ghost town where the ghosts are real and time is immaterial. And it was just like a lot of change all at once. And I don't always like change. I like status quo. But I really like the fact that throughout this book, we've learned that nobody is trustworthy. The robots aren't trustworthy. We're getting the robots double-crossing themselves in a beat that's very similar to some of the beats from Saga. I think this is a lot of DNA in common with Saga, even though it's visually very different and the story is very different. The overarching story of the races at war and the stuff like that actually is very, very similar beats to Saga. And the theme of the issue so far this year has been kind of like, we can't really trust anybody. I'm going to skip this issue and come back to it, including Kaya, because we've seen Kaya have to make some terrible, terrible choices to keep her brother safe and move them through their journey to trying to bring him to a place where he can train as the golden child and like save the world. So kind of like shades of Avatar, but what if like Aang, what if not everybody believed that Aang was the Avatar? That's really kind of where this is. And so we've seen her do horrible things. She's sold people out. She's caused towns to be destroyed. But she's our title character. And so she's this very complex character. And we don't get a lot of emotional time with her. We do a little bit. We see that she loves somebody that she can't really be with. But we mostly get her physicality. And I just think it's so interesting to see like she's done stuff that we've absolutely rooted for her to do that have been terrible for other characters in the book. But we had to root for her because that's what the story is. That is so interesting rhetorically. Wes Craig did such an interesting job. And so now to have this new character who she doesn't trust and is making decisions not unlike the decision she made, it's like, ooh, this is doing a really interesting thing with perspective where it's like, oh, now we know what it's like for these other characters who are looking at Kaya and being like, I can't believe you just decided to sell out that whole town of people, because now she's reacting to somebody else in that similar way. One of the interesting things about this book is in between every arc, Wes Craig does a standalone issue, and in that standalone issue, he writes a one-off story that maybe is elsewhere in the world happening, or sometimes it's in the future, in the past, and then he also has some other indie artists jump in on and do a little backup story for fun. The thing is, these issues are very self-indulgent. Originally, Wes Craig said they were not going to be ever collected in a collection. Then after the second one, he relented because he wanted people to read them. But they really feel like they're more for him than they are for us, because a lot of times they are the worst issues of the book. And I get it. It's partially because they don't connect to the existing narrative of the book. But also it just feels like sometimes we really lose the storytelling thread, and I like it because he's having fun and he's so good, and I've learned to trust him so much over the course of the series that I'm happy to watch him have fun. But this issue that was earlier this year, number 25, which was one of the standalones, and it did advance the plot in a way, but it was like unintelligible to me, which is fine. He can have one unintelligible issue every 6 issues because this is some of the highest quality comic books I've ever read. I mean, I would compare this to Bone. It's that good. It's that elementally perfect. It's that it feels like a story for all time. There's shades of Avatar, shades of Saga, shades of Star Wars. It's that good. And his artwork is mind-blowing. I've had, yes, William Lee of all time. Like, I've been so slow in catching up on it because I kept thinking, what if it doesn't stay as good? What if I don't love it as much? I don't want to hype it up to everybody and then get to the present day and be like, no, even though I didn't love the past couple of issues as much as the earlier issues, this is an all-timer. This is like a Saga bone quality comic book. It's going to go 8 story arcs, which will take us around 40 to 50 issues, and it's that good. So now I get to talk about the current issue, which was my image pick of the week, issue number 27. And Kaya is written and drawn by Wes Craig, Jason Wordie on colors, and the colors in this book are absolutely breathtaking, and really good letters from Tom Napolitano. I mean, top to bottom, this creative team is killing it every issue. So now that we've learned not to always trust Kaya and not to trust Razzle, who's this demigod who may or may not be helping them, now he's like, I'm a demigod. All of the things, your father knowing to hunt, that was me teaching the myth of hunting to the people of the world. And she's like, you're a friggin' liar. And we don't know which of should we trust Kaya's distrust, or should we distrust her distrust and trust him? He definitely knows some magical things. He has definitely helped them. He even knows who the Black Wizards are who gave her his arm. But it's just such an interesting beat to play because they're both unreliable narrators at this point. Neither of them have a 100% record of being right. So that's interesting. But then we've also now happened upon this mining town where the robots have all of the animal people enslaved. And we've seen the robots really run voraciously over all the natural resources in the world. That's what this one scene was so interesting about back here, of this natural resources glowing orb that they've taken from another civilization that they've crushed under their foot. So now this is the first time, so far their conflict with the robots have been more about robots, you killed our father. But this is the first time that they're actually seeing and getting involved in the robots crushing somebody else's society, because Kaya already saw that happen once and she was like, no, fuck you, we're gonna get ours, you guys can have your society crushed and I'm just gonna move on with our life, which was a very tough spot that really was interesting. So now we're seeing Jin, the brother, be like, no, this time we're stepping in and we're saving these people. But he's just this 10-year-old kid, and now he's starting to own the idea that he's the golden child. So he's like, I'm here and I'm the golden child. And they're like, you're kind of scrawny. Golden how? And so it's just so interesting. Guys, this book, I'm telling you, I'm so happy it's surviving on the market. I'm so happy people are buying it month after month. I am not going to stop beating the drum every month until I get you all to try the first arc. How often do you hear me go off this hard, not just about one issue, not just about one arc, but a comic book that has reached issue number 27? How often do you hear me go this crazy? Okay. Moving on to Laura Kinney Wolverine. This issue really explained to me what was wrong with last issue for me. This is the end of a 2-part arc. This was issue number 75. I do not think it was merited that level of celebration. Written by Erica Schultz, art by Giada Belviso, who really was incredible here. Colors from Rachel Rosenberg and letters from Corey Petit. This has Laura in her kind of imaginary world, and we figure out why, and the why of it is very, very cool that we find out in this issue. But the thing is, at the end of last issue, it ended in the wrong spot. It ended with Hellion kissing her in the doorway, and she never popped claws, and we never got to the twist. So that pushed all of that content into this issue, and I just gave it too much intro to have to work through to finally get to the cool, fun action part of this, which is not to say that everything's got to be fun because it's action, but I just felt like it was such a weird cliffhanger to do a cliffhanger still, a cliffhanger within the alternate reality rather than a cliffhanger that tells us about the alternate reality. And I really felt that in this issue because it really felt like it took several pages to get underway. But once it gets underway and we find out that it's beautiful dreamer who has caused her to be in this fantasy, and that there's a reason she was suspended within it, and there's a way for them to fight themselves out, it turns into just a really cool action issue for X-23. Really, really fun slicing and dicing. Just Giada Belviso draws the hell out of it, but I also love him drawing this kind of flapper era dress and beautiful dreamer. Just very fun issue. Not super significant, not super memorable. I really just think that they made a structural faux pas with not pushing some of the stuff at the beginning of this issue into the end of the previous issue. Laura Kinney Wolverine, says James Abel. Dream versus VR Simulator part was over a little fast, but still a fun issue. See, I think it should have just been over last issue, and this should have been more of the action. Okay, I decided I'm not going to catch up on this. Let one be a double. It keeps happening every month, and I keep saying, maybe I'm going to go back and read it. I didn't like the first issue. Just because it's James Tynion, it doesn't mean I have to love everything he does. I don't read Mark Spicer's Monsters, number 5. Okay, I saw this creating a lot of controversy online. And it's written by Christopher Priest, so you know it's going to be friggin' bonkers. Here we go. So this is very much a future-looking sequel to Christopher Priest's run on Black Panther. It's not the whole world of the Marvel Universe in the future. People are freaking out and making that mistake. It's Christopher Priest telling the end of his story of Black Panther, his Dora Milaje. In the same way that Daredevil Cold Day of Hell is the end of a possible version of Charles Soule's story of Daredevil. Not only is it Christopher Priest, who I have my problems with, but it's Joe Quesada drawing it. And this man, I mean, in case you thought that he had lost a step or that it wasn't going to be as good as the Joe Quesada you love, by the way, with Richard Eisenhower on color. Whew. Every panel of this was like a hot damn holy shit experience. Even if you don't read a single word of Christopher Priest's writing, the art in this is breathtaking. I had no idea that I could like Joe Quesada's art more, but I did. But then here's the other thing. Christopher Priest has this trope that he does where he jumps around in time a lot, and it's usually done in like a 9-panel grid where one of the panels introduces the time, and that's fine. It's his style, and it works, and we've seen it at Marvel and DC and on Vampirella and his indie stuff. But you know, it's been happening for years and years now, and it's not cinematic. It's contained. It feels small because it's just giving one little panel of introduction. It always feels like we're cutting into a scene that's already happening because there's just one panel in the grid. This issue has this beautiful, beautiful lettering from Richard Starkings and Tyler Smith to introduce each scene with this like massive, giant, bold sans serif title of where we are, and then underneath a tickler of how far before or after the world to come we are. And what's interesting, and I didn't pull too many pages, so I can't show this, is sometimes the art is interacting with the letters. Sometimes the art's behind the letters. Sometimes the characters are popping in front of the letters. Just really cool lettering. And also for a Christopher Priest comic that has a lot of narration from different characters, a lot of speaking, and just like a lot of, you don't want to crowd Quesada's art. I just think the lettering in this issue is phenomenal. Like, it was one of those issues that made me glad that I've learned how to notice when lettering is good, because the lettering in this issue was really, really good. I know that there was a last page reveal on this that got everybody talking. You have to remember, Christopher Priest is a crazy person. Like, I don't know about his mental wellness, but I know what I read in Vampirella. And I do think that there are some interesting things going on with the hamsters and the wheels in his brain. But it's also Christopher Priest, and he's always trying to say something about the world, about race politics, and about gender politics. I often think he's saying the wrong things, but we'll see what he says here. But I just think if you've seen that reveal on social media, I'm not going to tell you what it is. It's clearly, he's clearly doing something with it. It's clearly intentional. You don't just do that by mistake. But I haven't even talked about the story of this comic. It's about a future where T'Challa is reaching the end of his run in one part of the future that we're seeing here, but then also a further part of the future where there's even something else happening in the future of Wakanda, and we don't quite have our arms around it. It just feels like the secret other history of Black Panther. And, you know, there's been a lot of great Black Panther writers that I would maybe love to see come back and do this. I would love to see this series from each of his significant writers from the past 20 years. But there was just something very specifically magical about this issue that I just was so drawn into. And that's for me, who you know does not always like Christopher Priest. Jamie C47 saying, love, love, love this. The ending is great. Cliffhanger. Love the art, the plot, everything. Yeah, it is. It is just done to the highest possible standard. If you like future stuff, and if you are familiar, at least with the first arc of Christopher Priest's 1998 Black Panther run, I do think you will like this book. It's pretty incredible. Okay, Marvel Meow. You know, sometimes Marvel Meow has a little story. Sometimes it's just like a little vignette. In this vignette, Gwenpool falls asleep at a party where there are pets. Fastest 4 seconds. If only all of every comic book could be talked about in 4 seconds. This is written and drawn by Nao Fuji, whose art is incredible, as it is every month, but there was no real story in this particular issue. I don't read Junie Ba's Monkey Meat #4. I think this is one more issue in this limited series anthology approach to it. Okay, Bunk, I'm so sorry. I promise we're going to talk about some other books that I like. You're going to have to hear me scream and shout for a second here. I'm going to twist and shout. I'm going to go full Beatles. Knowing now what I know, having read this last issue, I wish I could go back in time and slap this comic book out of every person's hands who started buying it, because this is the look, the feel, the touch of creative bankruptcy. This, The Moon is Following Us, #10, truly exposed that Daniel Warren Johnson is not infallible, that some of his ideas are bad, and that you can't always trust him, because this was a pile of heaping Bullshit. Yeah, the art was cool. And if you're somebody who can just read an art book and it doesn't really matter what the story is going on, you're going to love this. I love the way he goes back and forth on the same page. In this book, I think once or twice, even in the same panel with Raleigh Gosmo. That is really, really cool. But this story, there was no story. Basically, we get to the end of this 10 issues of moving through Dreamland, and surprise, in this final issue, again, a dream fight happens where all the rules of the fight get changed because we're in Dreamland and nothing actually matters. So why did we read any of the issues of it, really? And then there's no resolution. The resolution is like, sometimes bad things happen, but people love each other. Okay, you could have written me a Hallmark card that said that. The fact that this had no plot, we never really learn anything about the characters. They don't really actually go on a journey. They just say, I love you. We're going to do this. Dreams are hard. This is scary. I love you. We're going to do this. Dreams are hard. Things are scary for 10 issues. It wasn't worth the time. It wasn't worth the money. It wasn't a good pitch. It wasn't a good story. And it's a black mark that will always exist on Daniel Warren Johnson's bibliography because it was such a pile of, again, heaping, stinky bullshit. I cannot believe I read 10 issues of this terrible fucking comic book. It was insulting. It was bothersome. It was terrible. It was bankrupt. I really am going to think twice the next time I see Daniel Warren Johnson's name on a comic book, unfortunately. Okay. You know what, though, Cedric and Ellen? Some people are going to like it because it's an amazing art book. Nothing can take away from the art. And some people, and we've learned this on recent weeks with me, are fine with a more metaphorical story. They're fine with the action going back and forth in a dream world. They're fine with like never really getting anything tangible about the characters. They're fine with things not making sense because that's a journey that they're willing to go along with. I don't like books like that. I like a book that has a reason that I'm there, where I learn something, that the characters go through something. And I just think that every issue of this being subjected to dream logic just made me increasingly enraged. And that takes nothing away from how good Daniel Warren Johnson has been on past series like Murder Falcon, like Extremity, but this just shows me that like some of the places he's going to go, I'm just not interested in going with him, which is fine. It doesn't mean he's a bad person. Doesn't mean I'm never going to read a comic book by him again, but I'm certainly going to read comics by him in the future with a lot of skepticism because I just think it was so stupid. This is Our Brilliant Ruin Horror at Crane Mansion, issue number 3 of 3, and this is a comic book tied to some kind of RPG or game of some kind called Our Brilliant Ruin. It's written by Colin Bunn, and it's art by Christopher Mitten with colors from Pikey Hamilton and letters from Frank Sedovic. This, unfortunately, I had such a good time with that last issue, and this issue kind of just was Floptina for me, El Flopperino, because the first issue kind of was like, ooh, let's tease a bunch of character classes from this game that like exist in this world, but we're not going to explain them to you, and we're not going to tell you what the game is, but we're going to be like, oh, this person's a monster hunter, and we're like, wink, wink, monster hunters are cool. And then those of us reading who don't know what the game is are like, okay. And then last issue was this very cool supernatural kind of Agatha Christie meets Eldritch horror mystery, and I was like totally there. It was like a whodunit, people were dying, the colors are really cool. And this issue, the whole thrust of the issue is like, okay, this lady wears a dress that turns her into a monster and she killed everybody. Okay, like there was I guess it was cool to see that she was the one that was behind it the whole time, but it didn't take me anywhere. It didn't go anywhere. Like she had a dress, she killed everybody, we kill her by throwing some sugar on her because memories are sweet, and then we leave. So I don't feel like I learned anything about the game. The only thing I kind of intuited about the game is that it's about like specific objects that are tied to the ruin, and if somebody gets one of these objects, they can be like possessed by it. But I just think this kind of failed on all cylinders. Like it failed as a mystery, it failed as a story about a character, and it kind of failed to get me interested in the game. And I'm somebody with a massive shelf of like a dozen different RPGs up here. So I think it kind of missed the mark. I mean, it's not terrible, but issue 2 is the only fun issue. This is the Patchwork Girl of Oz 5. I think this is the last issue, I'm not sure, but it's adapted by Otis Frampton. Now we come to Plague House. I'm sorry, this is the sequence where I hate a bunch of indie books, but I promise there's one that I liked right after this. So this is Plague House number 3 of 4, written by Michael Conrad with illustration and lettering by Dave Chisholm. And this one really didn't work for me, but not in I hate it creative bankruptcy way, and I can explain to you why I didn't like it. So the first 2 issues are about this kind of team of ghost facers that are in haunted places, supposedly solving their haunting. And but it turns out that it's actually just the one guy, and he's doing some really terrible stuff, and that terrible stuff is solving the haunting, and the other 2 people are just pure placebo effect. So now that the band breaks up, we see the other 2 people trying to resolve hauntings on their own, not realizing that they've been the placebo the whole time, and that they are not going to be solving jack shit. And so bad things happen to them. I think that's incredibly well told. It was beautifully drawn by Dave Chisholm, but I just think that because there's just not a lot of dimension to the guy that's doing terrible things. So basically we're seeing bad things happen to the two characters that were the likable characters, and then the terrible character keeps being terrible, but we don't really get a lot about his motivations, and we don't really see him in a really sympathetic light. So it's just really hard to get excited about anything in this comic book. Also, I have to put my offended by being queer lens on once again this episode. There was a non-binary character in this comic book who I loved so much because it was truly not about their gender. Like, it really left it up to your own decision if they were, assigned male at birth or female at birth, or if it even mattered to you. And I love that because I think so often when we play the beat of a non-binary character, it's like, now I'm non-binary even though you think I'm a guy. And then later in this issue, this character is in a mental institution, and the mental institution, they're trying to play the cruelty of the mental institution, but it just genders the character over and over again. And to be fair, the main awful character is like, please stop gendering them. They're non-binary. But I just didn't really like that beat. Like, you can show a way that a mental institution is terrible and dehumanizing in a way that doesn't pull the veil back from the beautiful rhetorical thing that you did by giving us a non-binary character that truly exists outside of the binary. Like, it felt like I was like, like sad trombone to like make them so deliberately binary, which I don't hold against this issue. I had other problems with this issue, but that kind of just compounded. I was like, the one character that I personally was really into and sympathetic for, like, also doesn't really have anything to be excited about in this issue. It kind of just, I don't know. I still recommend the series. It's a really cool horror series. If you like that idea of ghost hunters who aren't actually being affected, but one of them is doing something terrible that is making the ghosts be afraid of them, I think that you might really enjoy it. And if you like Dave Chisholm's art, you'll really enjoy it. It just didn't quite hit for me. Omnibus Cafe, 100% of my read is digital because I ain't getting no floppy comics here in New Zealand. They're like $12 each, and I'm not, if I waited for them to get here from DCBS, I would be even further behind than I am currently behind. Okay, let's keep it moving. I mean, again, Chisholm's art, absolutely incredible. I just didn't vibe as much with the story. Poison Ivy from G. Willis, and I was starting to feel like a little bit on the outs with this book for a few months there, but I'm really bouncing back. It's got Marcio Takara on art and Arif Prianto on colors, and it is gorgeous again. But not only is it gorgeous again, and also we cannot overlook Hassan Otsman Al-Hal on letters, because the letters really make this book, but it pays off things that happened. And I think that that's something that this book is getting right, and why it's working so well as an ongoing title in a way that other books don't, is that it really does reward you for paying attention. It rewards you for having read earlier arcs, but it doesn't keep you at arm's length for reading if you haven't. So there are some things for Janet for HR that are rewarding here. There's some things for Pam that are rewarding here, for Killer Croc, for Peter Undyne. But it's also cool in what happens here because we see the forest separating people again. The forest has a life of its own, and that's something we've developed all across the series. And we also see Ivy finally accepting some of the power that's been offered to her, which is such an interesting character journey because at the beginning of this series, she thinks she has all the power and she's going to run roughshod over the world of man. And then she realizes that she has the wrong idea about that. But since then, she's been offered different kind of power, which she's rejected. And it's really interesting here to see her finally accept that when she needs it and see how righteous that power really is in her hands. And again, the art in this book is just so spectacular, so noteworthy every single time. I do feel like G. Willow Wilson is running out of ideas to keep Janet from HR part of the story. You could remove her and the story would be the same. Yeah, I do think that we're really starting to drag a little bit, but it feels like it could be coming to a conclusion. I'm very interested to see if this story is going to keep running after this arc or if it's going to wrap up somewhere around issue 36 or issue 40. I mean, amazingly, G. Willow Wilson has made it feel like Poison Ivy is an essential, ongoing comic book that should always exist, which, like, wow, what a cool thing. I didn't read Pop Kill by Johnson and Palmiotti. I don't read Power Rangers Prime. I don't read Radiant Black because I find it intensely boring, but I did read Red Hulk #5, and this issue finally delivers all of the hulking out that we've been asking for, at least I've been asking for, this whole time in a way that feels intensely satisfying. This is the one Benjamin Percy book that I'm really loving. In fact, it's one of my favorite books from him at Marvel, and Jeff Shaw is doing an amazing job. I've never seen his art look this smooth and controlled, colored by Brian Valenza, and letters from Corey Petit. This, I mean, it's an action issue. We finally get to see Red Hulk hulk up and fight a whole horde of Doombots, and it is so satisfying. But it's also satisfying because we realize something as this issue goes on, and we kind of got a hint of it last issue, that Red Hulk does not realize that he's in one world under doom right now. He's been kept under lock and key for so long that he doesn't know that that's been happening. So he's putting out distress calls to the United States, distress calls to other superheroes, not realizing that there's no one who's going to come and save him as well as Machine Man and Deathlock, who he's teamed with. Jeff Shaw just drawing the ever-living hell out of Machine Man and Deathlock. Amazing colors from Brian Valenza. And so we end this book with Red Hulk's like, "You bend the knee to doom, America has no king." So this series, very interesting. It's been solicited up to like issue 8 or 9 at this point. Every single issue has the One World Under Doom title banner. So it's really kind of setting up the idea that Red Hulk is almost going to play a foil, like issue for issue, beat to beat, to the One World Under Doom. So there's no hint yet if it's going to continue after that or what's going to happen after that. But I love that. Like, I kind of love the idea of like an event book that's centered on a villain and then an ongoing series that's not really part of the event, but it's bannered of the event. And we get to see a particular hero's mission against that villain the entire time. Yeah, America has no king. You got to think that like even if he added that on like a script touch-up pass, it still would have been lettered only 2 months ago. So like he wrote that line at the very most recent 2 months prior to this coming out, and this came out a whole month ago because I'm still a month behind on my reading. So that is really, really prescient stuff. Prescient stuff. I dropped Resurrection Man. I gotta turn down the heater that I brought into this room because I'm sweltering. Now that it's getting nice out. I don't need it cranked quite so high. Okay, and by the way, I'm wearing the same pants that ripped on stream last week. You don't want to see them, but they're the same. I'm like, hello. It's like Alien. Same pants. So I dropped this book, Resurrection Man Quantum Karma. It's Black Label, so I can. And I don't want to be here hating on Ram V. I really respect Ram V, and it's just not for me. And that's cool, and that's fine. Unfortunately, I couldn't read Risk number 3. We know how much I love this comic. Black Box Comics even gets in the comments sometimes, but they didn't upload this yet to Global Comics, which is where I read all of their comics, which is such a bummer. Now that they know who I am, I have to ask very politely, very, very demurely, if maybe they could just send me Digital Advance Comics because they know that I'm out here pimping their line. I mean, if it was bad, I would tell you it was bad, but I've been absolutely loving this D.G. Chichester book. So when it pops up on Global Comics, I will read it. I love that Logan Wayne and Kane and Lance McNair are like, totally like on their own journey through the comics now. No, Kane, there's no fan on in the background. There's just like a panel heater. It's not a kind of heater that makes any noise. My computer is wheezing in the background because I need to survive 86 more days until the new Macs drop. I'm going to buy a new MacBook the second they are available on the site. There's no point in getting one now. I've just got to last 87 more days. Who knows how many streaming misadventures, but the noise you hear is this computer not being able to keep up with all the things I'm asking it to do right now. Okay, now let's talk about Sam and Twitch Case Files. So this book has been on an upward trajectory recently, and that's been because there's been no additional scripts by Todd McFarlane, but guess what? This issue has some Todd McFarlane additional script. It's primarily written by Jordan Burrell with art from Thomas Nalchek and colors from FCO Flascencia and Sheila Saldana with letters from Tom Orzechowski. I'm trying to find a way to talk about this, not to repeat myself. The interesting thing that this book does well is it's really taking us into the lives of Sam and Twitch and not just having them be like guys in a police cruiser solving cases. Like, it's making it personal for them. And I think it's doing a much better job than the first arc and making it personal to the two of them. And there are times when everything clicks. On this page, the weird lettering clicks, the art clicks, the personal quality of spending time close to Twitch clicks. It all works on this page. And we got a little burst of Spawn in this issue. Spawn only turns up from time to time, and he basically turns up to be like, I can't help you, but it's just fun to be reminded they are part of this Spawn universe. But then we get pages like this that just don't work with this lettering. And I know this is small for you, but I just have to point this out in specific. So the whole idea is the lettering is right on the background art, right? So then why in this panel on the left here, where there's a bunch of pills being spit out by a machine, why would you not move those letters down a little bit lower? The artist has deliberately given you a plain black canvas to put the letters on, but instead we have white lettering that's crossing over from black onto gray. It looks awful. Then here below, if you look at the bottom panel, we have letters on top of this guy walking away from his desk chair, not an easy thing to read lettering on, when the artist again has given us all of this blank space all around Sam's head that we could have run the letters a little bit onto this jar of lotion as well, and it would have been readable. I just don't understand why Tom Orzechowski is making these choices. Like, there are so many obvious things that he could do to make this more readable, and it drives me crazy. But also, I don't know if I can blame this on Jordan Burrell or Todd McFarlane. There's this beat here where like we're supposed to believe that Twitch is really on the outs with his wife, but the way we do it is this like roundabout out fashion over the course of 5 pages where they go to her brother's birthday dinner, but her brother is like, Twitch, you never come because you're usually on beat as a cop and there's no good cops, but you're a good cop, but you're being investigated and being a bad cop, and I wish you would be a bad cop and get out of that investigation because good cops should be bad cops. Like, it didn't make any sense. I read it 5 times and the dialogue just felt like it appeared out of nowhere and had no connection to each dialogue that came before it. And we did need to maneuver Twitch and his wife into having a fight for a specific plot beat in this book to happen, but clearly Todd McFarlane was involved because it didn't make any sense. But anyway, I do think this is an interesting, spooky procedural book. I've really loved it for months now. This issue in particular just didn't hit for me. Okay. Now, Scarlet Ranger. Where's that book I really want to talk about? It's not here yet. I didn't read Scarlet Ranger. I think this is one of those Kickstarter books that, like, the first issue came out years and years ago. I did read The Scorched. So, first of all, we always like to look at the second cover of The Scorched. Where's Renee's Spawn? These secondary covers on this book are just off the hook. I mean, the main ones are good, too. The main cover is by Raymond Gay. The B covers that always have She Spawn are by Von Randall. This also had additional script from Todd McFarlane, but it's written by primarily John Layman with art from Steven Segovia and colors from Dene Ribeiro and letters from Underworld Design. Finally, it feels like we're like back on a track with this book for like a little bit. We're getting a little bit closer because we see who the enemies are. We see that hell is lining up against the Scorched team. And also in the present, we get this really good scene, although it goes on way too long, of She Spawn being like, Medieval, we need you on the team because of who you are as Medieval Spawn and who you are as Mark Rosen, who's the body that he's inhabiting, and I need both. And so there's this great scene of her walking around the base and being like, are you gonna like fix the range on our guns? Are you gonna reprogram our computer network? No, because you're from the Middle Ages, bitch. So I need you need Mark Rosen to come back, and you've got to share this body. I need you both on my team. However, that's like the whole issue. It's the whole issue is them doing this walk and talk. I've never seen John Layman deliver comics that are this weirdly decompressed and drawn out. I have to think there's something going on behind the scenes where Todd Father is like making it slow down or making it line up with like the other books in some way, because it's just like nothing has happened for 5 months now. It's crazy. So anyway, did look good though. Looked very good. I mean, Segovia is such a great artist, and I think he's being colored extraordinarily well here. Okay, Secret Six. I've been really beating up on this comic book, and I'm rooting for it. I'm definitely rooting for it. I like Nicole Maines, and I like these characters, and I want to enjoy this book. Here's an interesting thing that happened. This is, by the way, by 2 artists that I really love, Cian Tormey, and again, Steven Segovia, somehow doing 2 books a month, colored by Rain Barreto, who I love, and letters from Steve Wands. This issue did something really interesting, which is that Dreamer is not in this issue. Nicole Maines, who's the actress on TV of Dreamer, doesn't get to write Dreamer. She just is there for like a panel, and then she's gone. So this entire issue is really John Kent and Catman, and also Silver Banshee, I think her name is. It's so good. It's like the best Nicole Maines has done with characterization I've read from her in like the past year. Maybe the secret is we've got to take Dreamer from her. Maybe she's just like feels like she's like, oh, I'm the actress, so I can write whatever I want. And maybe it's just not landing ever for Dreamer. And maybe she should just be writing tons of other characters, because this felt authentically like a Secret Six book. And so Catman goes off with John Kent, and they don't really know each other. And he's like, and they're talking about like, what are we going to do? How are we going to save our friends? But then Catman takes us into a flashback of like him and Deadshot and what it's been like for the 2 of them since the old Secret Six broke up, but that they're kind of like on the outs with each other because Deadshot is so at the beck and call of Amanda Waller, and Catman is like, that's not okay with me. And so it just is a really interesting kind of like story within a story within a story structure, where like we're getting Catman's memory and then we're getting him with John Kent, but they have now escaped from the rest of the team being captured all together, which is what took Dreamer off the board. It really worked. Like, this was the amount of fun I had with the first issue, and I just think Nicole Maines just needs to step away from Dreamer every so often, just for a second or two, and write some of the other characters, because she is a very good writer. Very, very good writer when not solely writing Dreamer badly. So now we come to the Sixth Gun. So this is a fun thought experiment. I have never read any Sixth Gun ever. It's by Colin Bunn, illustrated by Brian Hurt, colored by Bill Crabtree, lettered by Crank. I don't know if that's the whole original team, because I don't know anything about this comic book. I just know that there's whole like omnibuses or absolute editions about it, and that people really like it. So I went into this knowing literally nothing. This was an anthology series, and I had to try to intuit what it was about. It's about 3 different people in 3 different time periods. Here's what I thought I understood. There are magical weapons. I don't know that there's 6 guns. It could be that each weapon is a number, because we get a second sword. And I don't know if it's the second sword of 6 swords or whatever, but so we had one story of this guy who has the second sword, and he's just like fighting off some like bad demony guys. That was interesting. Then the second story was so interesting. It's about this guy who turns out to be a bad guy, and he's got this artifact that's like the essence of something, and this evil cabal really, really wants it, and you get the sense that they're gonna like change the whole world if he gives it to them. But even as a bad guy, he knows that might be a bad idea, so I was really intrigued by that. And then we got two like old Western people. Is their gun the sixth gun? I'm not sure. And they're like chasing Quarry, but they go through this mystical crossroads, and it's taking them all around the world every time they go through the crossroads, and they don't always know when they come up on the crossroads. So the crossroads is kind of this like metaphysical space that can be anywhere. I'm kind of into it. So there's another Six Gun miniseries coming up. I'm going to read that too. And if I like it, I will go back and start reading all of Six Gun, I guess, by Cullen Bunn. But this was, I don't feel like I really understood the core of what it was about. But as 3 anthology stories, each one of them was fascinating to me. And it kind of made me interested in this world. So great job, Cullen Bunn and the gang. Yeah. Okay, Slasher's Apprentice I dropped after the first issue, which was about a girl who's really into a serial killer and is helping the serial killer not be caught, though the serial killer didn't ask her to do that. She's just doing it. Just didn't feel like there's any more story to read. I spent a long time looking for this because anytime I see a book that is just so straight from the early 80s in terms of the way the title looks and the way the characters look, I want to read it, but I could not find a way. Again, I think this was like a Kickstarter comic. Kickstarter people, you need to keep including late pledge. When you're a comic book person and you've done a comic book Kickstarter, people are going to find out about your comic later because they've seen it on League of Geeks or they've seen it in previews. And if they miss being able to get your comic from previews, some of these people are digital readers, or maybe they just want to buy directly from you and not through previews, which given the state of time and bankruptcy right now is a good thing. You need to have late pledge still turned on your campaign. Okay, that's my PSA. Solomon Kane. I love this comic book so much. Patrick Zurcher. So this guy, he's an adventurer, he's a mercenary, he's in the 1500s, he was on a ship where he killed somebody, and he didn't really have to kill him, and now he kind of feels bad, so he brings his artifact back to his family in Italy, but they discover that it's actually leading to this secret serpent ring that's somewhere in Africa, so now they're all in Africa, and they're like, going down the river in Africa, and kind of like nobody trusts anybody. They've got these other swashbucklers with them that are both trying to get with the woman that's the daughter of the guy, and the woman is actually falling in love with Solomon Kane, but Solomon Kane has a vow of chastity or something, I don't know, and they're also dealing with this tribe that has a little bit of internal conflict, but the one person in the tribe that knows how to speak English, or I guess maybe Italian, who's acting as their translator, doesn't know that the preacher that he's been working with has been taken over by a devil, which is being piloted by this evil snake woman who lives like outside of time and space and is descended, I think, from Lilith as the original, form of evil in human form. And so then they have a big shootout with all of the snake people. This book, everything that, if you're getting hype as I'm like talking about it more and more, the book is that hype. The art is that good. This has an assist on color. So usually up until this point, Patrick Zurcher has been coloring himself, but here we have some additional colors by, gosh, this is so small, Pete Pantzis. I'm so sorry. Names are important. Pete Pantzis. But also, this is again lettered by Richard Starkings and Tyler Smith, and the letters are so good. This is so cool. The thing that I love about it is I don't know anything about this character. I don't know anything about Solomon Kane. This feels like everything I was always told a Robert E. Howard story would be. It's complex enough. It's adventurous enough. It's got like cool, mystical, eldritch elements to it. It's like all of the things I've always been promised by people who love Robert Howard, and Zurcher is hitting every element. I never would have imagined that a Robert E. Howard non-Conan character would be in my top 12 books of the year, but month in and month out, this just has me hooked. I'm like, please I know this is probably a mini series to connect to a bunch of Serpent Ring things happening throughout all the Conan books, but I could read 100 issues of this by Patrick Zurcher. Just let him keep writing it, Titan. Find some other people to do cool art that are, nobody's as good as him, but like exists in a similar form as him, and please just have him keep writing it because I don't want it to be over. It's so good. Okay, speaking of, this is a perfect comic book. I have subscribed to it on Amazon. It's there for you to subscribe to if you want to. It is written by Dakota Brown with art, colors, and letters from David Lujan. It's from Red 5. It is called Something Beyond the Petrichor. It is the best concept I've seen in an indie book in so long, and it's perfectly introduced. There's this girl, and we see her living in the middle of the desert in a house, but the house is under this tarp. and she's talking about like the acid rain coming, and you're like, well, I don't understand. Why are you in a desert? Why do you have a house in a desert? Why do you have a stuffed animal that's a talking turtle? Why are you almost out of your rations? The first few pages ask so many questions. And we come to realize that this acid rain will dissolve anything except for plastics. And so that's why she's under the tarp. But like the rain has started to erode the ground around her house so much that soon the house is going to tumble and then they're going to just be exposed. She hasn't seen another human being in 18 months. She's just been living off of the food that she's been able to scrounge out of her pantry. And so she's like, we've got to take the show on the road. And so she takes her stuffed animal. Is the stuffed animal real, or is she just talking to it? Hard to say. And so she realizes that if she just puts a clear plastic shower curtain over an umbrella and has it drag on the ground, she pretty much is safe as long as she walks and as long as she stands still in the acid rain and until it passes, because it just comes and goes. And as we read, we realize that I thought this was like some fantasy world. No, it's the world we know. It's a potential future, a potential near future of the world we know. The art is incredible. It's so expressive. And I love that the acid rain is the scary monster here, but there also might also be a scary monster. Then just when I thought I really understood this, we flash back to get a little bit of her story of the life before this. And it's really just like a brief burst of what life was in the normal time. And especially with all the really tragic rains and flooding in the United States this weekend, I think it just really hit me to see that burst of normalcy right before her world gets upended, and it was very emotional. And then we also get fun beats of her being like, hey, if you get a plastic super soaker gun and you fill it with acid rain, it's basically like a laser gun because it can kill anything that's not plastic. And so her toy is like, that's some shooting. And she's like, yeah, well, hopefully it's going to keep us safe, you little stuffed asshole, because this is the only weapon I can think of that would threaten anybody, because everybody knows that the acid rain is killer and I happen to have a plastic water gun. It's brilliant. Even if you don't keep reading it, even if you just read this one issue and treat it like it was like a free comic book day one shot or one of that thing from the Nibs Digital Comic Book Fest, it's absolutely brilliant. I'm trying to not get too overhyped about number ones anymore, because sometimes I just think that they're the greatest thing, the bee's knees, and then sometimes they just go in a very different direction and it turns out that it's not the thing I was hoping or wanting from it. But as number one scripts go, this number one script is perfection. This should win awards. It's just absolutely paced in a perfect way. Even if this book goes off the rails, and it's only going to be 4 issues, so hopefully there's not that much room for it to go off the rails, but even if this is a perfect first issue script and every other script sucks, I will always have this first issue, and I urge you all to go out and read it. And I'm not the only one. Superjob said that was one of the best first issues I've read in a while, and that final page. So I'm begging you, please, it's on Amazon. You can get it in previews. You can talk to your comic book shop. Show this team and this comic book company, we want comics like this. It is called Something Beyond the Petrichor, and it is by far, no contest, the best comic book I read this week, possibly, well, so far this month. It's only been 6 days. Okay, now let's continue to Spider-Gwen the Ghost Spider. Now, we have heard me do a lot of screaming and yelling about Stephanie Phillips, but this was good. This was great. Was it great? Well, first of all, it's Paolo Villanelli on art, and I think that this has been a star-making turn from Paolo Villanelli. I think he's so good. There's something just so interesting about his art. It's almost kind of reminds me of Mike Perkins, colored here by Matt Milla. Great team. I hope they pop up elsewhere and not just in Ghost Spider. I think they're capable as a team of doing so much more. But here's the thing. Last issue, we had that great Jean Grey beat where Jean Grey was in Ghost Spider's head, and it was kind of like we finally felt like we got close to Gwen Stacy because we got Jean inside of her head, and so we got her being herself, talking to Jean. We got Jean being herself. It just worked really well. It feels like this continues that momentum, even though this is still Gwen Stacy in space, which I don't love, and her, sparring with Loki, which I think is a weird fit for her. It just felt more like her. Maybe it's a me thing and it's not a comic book thing. Maybe I just needed that mental reset of an issue spent just inside of Gwen's head to remind me what was great about the character, but I don't think it's just a me thing. I think Stephanie Phillips needed that issue too, to really zero in on what makes Gwen Gwen and just not some generic other super person, because this issue and the way that she faces down Loki as herself, as Gwen, not somebody who has cosmic power, but just as somebody who's a drummer in a band, really, really worked for me, and it was really, really attractive. So there's only one more issue of this series, then it's going to get relaunched as an all-new series. Who knows if it's going to be any good, but I do like that we're ending on a strong beat. I did like some of the earlier issues of the series. I just think that the wheels have kind of come off the bus for the past 4 or 5. I didn't read Star Noir. I don't even know what issue number this is because they didn't put it on the cover. As we know, I don't read Star Trek comics. I only watch Star Trek. Now we come to my other Marvel pick of the week, which is Star Wars Jedi Knights. First of all, I almost could complain that we don't have Madabek Musabakov doing the covers because his art is so good. But if you have Raza as a cover artist, I mean, this looks like a photo of Liam Neeson. It boggles my mind how he even does that. But Mark Guggenheim and Madabek Musabakov with Louis Guerrero color artist, and Clayton Cowles on letters. I mean, this is a perfect Star Wars comic book. Perfect. It's absolutely perfect. And for me, it excuses and apologizes for that experiment last issue where they did all splash pages, because if you're going to keep telling me kind of one-off comic issues that just have a little thread of the deeper plot, you can experiment. If you're going to keep doing one-offs and not get stuck in like a 6 or 7 issue arc, then great. Let some of the one-offs fail. That's cool. This is a really, really cool heist with Phaedra, who is a renowned for, as the recap says, her elaborate criminal schemes. And so she's playing Boba Fett against playing some Jedis against her, and then some other bounty hunters. And so it's mostly about her, but we get a lot of great scenes with the Jedi, who keep saying, the Jedi Order is not a constabulary. Like, we're not here to find your stolen stuff. We're not here to bring people justice. We're just here to keep things safe and keep people safe. But they get convinced that going after Phaedra would maybe keep elements of the galaxy safe. And so Qui-Gon and Shakti go on to search her out, but it's just a wonderful issue full of absolutely brilliant art, tons of double crosses, so much cool art, so much cool coloring, really great lighting. I mean, it was just great. You don't have to have read any other Star Wars book ever, really. You could just pick this one issue up, Star Wars Jedi Knights #4, and you can just enjoy it all on its own. If you've ever wanted to read a comic book story that has Qui-Gon in it and enjoy it, and I always forget if it's Qui-Gon or Qui-Gon. It's been 25 years. I still don't know. Yeah, it was perfect. It was absolutely perfect. What a brilliant comic book. And I think that's the power, by the way, of getting a TV guy like Mark Guggenheim writing this, because he understands how to do episodes. I think a lot of people writing the Star Wars comics are still writing for trade, and they're like, well, trade is like an episode, or a trade is like a movie, but it's like, it just gets so drawn out. Like, you got to be able to just deliver on story. And I think that that's what a lot of the Dark Horse comics were good at, was always delivering something, not just dragging it out. And I do think that that's one of the great benefits of Guggenheim on this book. Star Wars: The High Republic, Fear of the Jedi. This wraps up the miniseries, but there's one last finale. I'm so happy that I don't have to read this comic book anymore. And I read it because I do try to read all Star Wars comics. I like Star Wars. I'm a Star Wars fan, but man, Cavan Scott, look, I'm sure he's gifted at something, but it ain't Star Wars comics. And I think for me, the contrast between this and the Jedi Knights book was so clear. We've got this huge cast of characters that are fundamentally interesting characters, but it just feels like all they do is arrive on panel and just say what they're doing. Like, and this is kind of a cheat to say that, because she is sending a message to a lot of people here, so it's literally her job to get on panel and say, people of the galaxy, I am Jedi Master Kreeve Trennis. But it just feels like, as I was reading it, there was so often that I stopped on a page and I was like, oh, this page, it seems like it's action, but it's just a character narrating their action. It almost felt like very Stan Lee in a way, like not trusting the artist to be able to communicate things, but it does kind of make sense because Cavan Scott is primarily a novelist, I think. So it kind of makes sense that he's like over narrating the book, but it just never let any of these characters take flight in our imagination. And it really struck for me why the High Republic Star Wars Adventures book works so much better for me, because it just lets us fall in love with the characters. In this book, the characters are always telling instead of showing. And I think that was its great weakness, and it's Cavan Scott's great weakness. Now we have Earth's Mightiest Mutant Storm. And here's the thing I want to say about this book by Murwa Iodell, Lucas Wernick back on art, Alex Guimarães on color, and Travis Lanham on letters. This book is spectacular. And Iodell has a spectacular take on Storm. I don't know that his sense of humor is the funniest sense of humor. I mean, it's funny, it's quirky, but and I also don't know that his idea of galactic stakes is what a Storm book needs. I just think it's so interesting to have such a good take on Storm, fundamentally, but to also be like, but it's going to be funny, and it's going to have eternity in it, when the take on Storm by itself is just so good. So the Storm scenes of this, and we know that I get horny for superheroes doing bureaucracy, because I love the contrast about a superhero stuck doing paperwork. But this scene, as the FBI continues to try to interrogate Storm and try to find out what crimes she may have committed, or if she even feels culpable for any crimes at all, totally works for me. But then also there's the scene of the FBI and all of its weird supernatural agents going to Limbo and trying to strike a deal with Limbo to be like, screw magic, screw Maddie Pryor, why don't you make a deal with the government? And the demon in Limbo is like, screw the United States government, you've only been around for 250 years, we've been around for centuries, why should we trust you? But they're like, because we're going to let you have your own tools of power, you don't have to be subservient to somebody with a soul sword anymore. And that's very attractive to the demons of Limbo. All this epic stuff written incredibly well by Odell, but then there's like a funny, punchy tournament thing that I just don't get. Like, it just, took pages, and I guess some people probably really laughed at it. I just didn't think it was that funny. And then the Eternity stuff with Storm, I just don't know. It feels like we're turning her into another Phoenix. We've already got a Phoenix. Storm is Storm. Let Storm be Storm. I don't know if she needs to be an intergalactic power with all the power of the universe coursing through her. I trust Aodell to a degree right now, because I do think he gets Storm so fundamentally well, and it's been so long since I've seen somebody do something this interesting with her. But some of those jokey aspects and some of those intergalactic aspects just make me a little bit nervous that I don't know where this comic is going to go. Teen Titans Go #4. Apparently this is ongoing. I thought it was a limited series, but no, it's just unlimited more Teen Titans Go comic books. I don't read Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles X Naruto. I don't read The Terminator because I don't like Declan Shalvey's writing, but I did read Ultimate Spider-Man Incursion. This is written both by Cody Ziegler, who writes Miles Morales, and Dennis Camp, who writes The Ultimates, with art from Jonas Scharf, colors from Edgar Delgado, and letters from Corey Petit. First of all, let's talk about the art. Jonas Scharf really does a lot of amazing things here, but I do think having somebody that's this loose of an artist, having to draw the amount of structure that's on the Spider-Man suits, did feel like a little bit of torture, and sometimes it just felt like his hand was tired drawing this stuff, especially in Peter Parker's son suit, Richard. But this beat that Cody Ziegler and Dennis Camp play of Miles coming into the Ultimate Universe and both Peter and Richard being like, whoa, he's cool, is so great. It's just such a great moment for Miles, who's walking into a new Ultimate Universe now as the experienced Spider-Man to these two Spider-Men who are inexperienced. And like Miles is such a screw up so often in his book, and it's just such a fun beat to see him go elsewhere and people be like, yo, you're a pro. That said, it just feels like we play the same beat over and over again after the cool fight with Spot, where they're looking for Miles' sister, and literally the entire issue is Peter Parker Spider-Man just looking into people's windows. That's the whole issue. Like, I get that his sister is missing and she's a toddler and it's very scary for him, and we're in this alternate version of New York, but is your plan really we're going to look into every window in Manhattan? It kind of just feels like Dennis Camp and Cody Ziegler got handed this brilliant concept that had been seeded originally from the original Ultimate Invasion by Jonathan Hickman, and it was like, it's finally time for this to come to fruition and have the cool fun of seeing Miles in this new Ultimate Universe. And they're like, great, our pitch is Peeping Toms. Like, it was just such a strange fit. So I liked a lot about this issue. I liked the writing for the characters. I love this mutual admiration society between these three Spider-Man. How they resisted have them all point at each other, I don't know. But I just felt like the amount of pages that got spent on them looking into people's windows was just truly absurd. I really, really, really couldn't believe how long we spent on it. James Abel says, this gave me some Spider-Verse. Yeah, that was the other thing. I'm so glad you said that. This had big Spider-Verse energy. I think if you read comic books and you're like, oh, Miles is like never the way that he is in Spider-Verse. I wish we could do like stuff in comic books more like Spider-Verse, but not like the Spider-Verse comics, but like the movie. This has that energy. And not just because they fight Spider, but just because of the way the characters bump up against each other. Very, very Spider-Verse. Completely agree with that. And it's just fun to see Miles in this other Ultimate Universe to be like, what is going on here? Like, this is not, he doesn't even fully remember where he came from, because the Molecule Man and Beyonder and Franklin Richards and all that stuff at the end of Secret Wars kind of glazed over that. So he only has a very vague memory of what his universe was like before, but he knows this is not where he was originally from, and he can see that it's different. Also, Scharf did some good art. I mean, this page is great. The bridge is great. I just think that in particular, that Richard Parker costume was making him crazy, it seemed like. Okay. Next is Ultimate Wolverine. Like, the thing about this comic is I've grown to love Alex Linz on art. He's the guest artist for the second issue in a row, at which point is he still a guest. I did like him on Namor as well, so I think he's just going on the good list. Chris Condon is going on the naughty list. I don't know how you could have a book called Ultimate Wolverine, and within 6 issues, 2 of them are just imaginary bullshit going on inside of Wolverine's head. Like, I get that when you cast a villainous character who's not in control of themselves as the main character, you do have limited plot options, but Chris Condon, that was a choice that you made in signing on as the writer of this book, and I just think that you could give us something more substantial than another issue for the second time, I believe, in 3 issues now, of us just reading somebody narrating something that's not actually happening inside of Wolverine's head. I don't understand why we're buying this comic book. I don't know why I'm buying it. I don't know why you're buying it. I don't know why the editors think we should buy it, because it's not a good idea. It's not a story. It's just you can get away with this once per arc, once per 10 issues maybe, but to do it twice in 3 issues shows me you don't have a plan to write the character that you have been hired to write. That said, at the end, once again, the art was good, and we got a cool data page at the end that does a cool remix of an X-Men character, but here's the thing. At the point that only the data pages are interesting, basically what this is me buying a Marvel handbook of how these characters could be reimagined in the Ultimate Universe, 1 data page at a time, costing $4.99 for each page. That's crazy. I'm so happy if you're liking this. Like, truly, if you're enjoying this, I wish that I knew how to enjoy it so I could enjoy it and enjoy the thing that you're enjoying, because every page made me angrier and angrier, and that angriness was only exponentially larger because it was the exact feeling I had 2 issues ago with the last stupid bullshit placeholder issue. I think I have to drop this. Even though Wolverine kind of remembers himself at the end, and even though we finally have a room full of cool X-Men that we've reimagined for the Ultimate Universe, I just don't know if I can trust this writer anymore to not waste my time and money. And it made me so angry. And it's such an interesting concept, and I don't know how you blow it so bad. Like, when we go back and read this in collected edition and we're like, oh, I wish we had more time with Wolverine as Winter Soldier, the reason we're going to say that is because he wasted 2 issues on this same narrating random stuff happening in Wolverine's head. I don't read Vanya, which from context I think is a titty book. And by the way, I'm spelling that in my mouth with 2 Ds. Tiddy. Not a dental T, titty, but a true D, a tiddy. But I think this is a titty book. Because it has all these like naked butt crack covers, but I would still read it. I would still read a cool lady in the forest with the bow and arrow. I like that. I look at this. Some of you look at this and you go, we're going to get titties. I look at this and go, cool lady in a forest with a bow and arrow. I don't read The Walking Dead Deluxe, although this is the last issue before All Out War begins. So if you really love that Negan arc, even if you just love it from the TV show, this would be the time to jump in to Walking Dead Deluxe. I didn't read Welcome to Monster World from Bad Bug. Bad Bug has a lot of comics all of a sudden like popping up, and I don't know who they are, so I have to look into that. Now we get to talk to what may be my second favorite comic series possibly of all time. It's been 5 years now, and I continue to love it just as much as I loved it the first time that I met it, which is James Tynion and Michael Dialynis's Wind. So this is the 3rd Wind series of 3. The first one was 10 issues, then there's a 5-issue one, and now this is the final 5 issues. So next issue is the end. And so I had originally read the first 10 issues. It was originally going to be a graphic novel back in 2020, and right at the beginning of the pandemic they decided it was going to come out as individual issues. I think they had decided before the pandemic started. I forget what the timeline was, and it was incredible. I read it, all of them with Kid Crisis. It was so good. I guess this is me, so we're going to do the same thing. Minute to talk about the background, minute to catch you up, minute about the new issue. I love this because it's a fairy tale story. It's a kid's story. It's absolutely a kid's storybook comic book, and it's great for adults too. But in this kid's world, there's heavy stuff. There's heavy stuff about race war. There's heavy stuff about identity. But the great thing about this and what this does is it's got queerness in it, but the queerness is never heavy. The people are just queer. Just about every single kid character in this book is queer in some way. And that's fine. And they just are. And some of them have conflicts with that, and they have people they love that they can't be with, or identities that they're not certain of. But the real hatred and discrimination that they feel is never about their queerness. It's about if they're monsters or not, or vampires or not, or fairies or not. And I just love that. Like, what a way. So often people think that if you're going to do queerness in a kid's comic, that it's got to be about like not being accepted. No, James Tynion just turns it on his head. He has such facility with this. It's so amazing. But it's about this kid, Wind, who has wings. Why does he have wings? And in a human world and especially in a human town that wants everybody in that town to be human and not be touched by magic, not be a fairy, not be a vampire, that is not okay. And so he's being discriminated against, not because he has a crush on the gardener's son, but because he's got wings and he might be something unknown to these people. And that sets off a whole chain of events that brings this world into war with itself, because all of these people have been spoiling for war. The vampires have been spoiling for war. The fairies have been spoiling for war. The humans have been spoiling for war. And they're not at war because of him, but would the war have started without him? Maybe, maybe not, but will the war end because of him? Maybe. So it is just such an interesting book. It's executed so highly. So catching up on the previous one, Throne of Wind, which I already have in hardcover, but I just hadn't read yet. In fact, they're right here, so I'm going to grab them. So these are the limited direct market only hardcovers. So this was book 1. You can get these same books in softcover, but the hardcovers are harder to get. And this is book 2. So that was the first 10-issue series. By the way, every issue is double size. So every issue has been 44 pages. And then this was the one I read last night, Throne in the Sky. Amazing. Like, page turner, couldn't put it down. So now we get to this new series, The Power of Blood, which I caught up to issue 4, which is the issue this week. So here's a minute of recap. So what's really interesting about this is so far this whole book has been about Wind. But at the end of that last one, he's kind of taken off the board briefly. And so we get to spend a lot of time with the other characters. In a lot of books, that could flop, right? Because the book called Wind, and we're not with Wind, like, what's that about? But this cast is so interesting. And in the last Throne of Wind, we spent so much time like on their adventure that we didn't really get to slow down and talk about them. And now we see them, they're finally safe. They're not on the run anymore. So kind of like Kaya, this book has been a lot about kids on the run being orphans, but now they're not on the run and some of them aren't orphans anymore. They're with their parents. And we get so many great statements from them as they kind of find themselves. And one of the big themes of this book is kids who are worried that nobody is out there making anything better for them. So this girl, Oakley, she says, you don't get it, do you? Nobody's going to do anything. They haven't for years. It's just going to keep getting worse and worse and worse. They're only thinking about themselves and what they can gain from it. And they'll all go to war and we'll live in the ashes. But I grew up knowing that most of the adults were idiots. That's the world. The world's unfair. And that's not what makes me give up hope. So it's, I mean, what a prescient thing, because it exists all the time, but this idea of youth seeing that nobody older is swooping in to save them and they're going to have to save themselves politically as activists, on their own. So that's a really interesting beat here. But then in issue number 2, we also get the parent side of things. We have the guy who doesn't know how to speak to his son, not because his son turned out to be gay or bi, but because his son has been touched by magic and now he's part of this magical fairy world in addition to being a human. And he says, I don't know how to speak to my son anymore. I don't know how to change. I don't even know that I want to. And that is so resonant too in this modern world of people who have been not even people who've been carried so far away by fake news and by extremism, but people who are just set in their ways and don't understand what the modern day kids these days are going through, and that they want to love their children, the younger people in life, their peers, their family, but they're not sure how to change to feel that love, and they're not sure if they want to change now that they're so set in their ways. It's not just an after school special of a comic book, but it's got so many resonant moments in it that make it so great to hand to a kid, but still make it so amazing on your own. And then we see this other person who's like, the last time I spoke to my father, I told him his generation had lost sight of their ability to change the world. And that is really what the message in this whole book is about, is like, all throughout Wind, who's going to take the opportunity to change the world? Because you know what? The people who want bad things, the people who want to do evil, the people who are selfish, the people who want their own gain, the people who want to break things apart, they're always going to take the initiative. They're always going to change the world. That's what they're about. So are any of the people who want good things and peace and happiness and care and love and devotion going to take that moment to change the world? Because if they don't, only the bad guys will. And that's what this book is really about. And so we finally, over the course of this, see the kids have to strike off on their own again, but now with the support of their parents, which is really, really cool and made me very, very emotional read. So finally come to this week's issue, the penultimate issue of the series. So I didn't take the best pages of this because if you're just hearing about Wind for the first time, I did not want to spoil it for you, but now we finally get close to Wind. And I love that everywhere that they go, it's kind of like a D&D campaign where every time they meet a new NPC, they're like, the party's going to adopt that. Tinian kind of does that, and we keep meeting these interesting people in these different places. So of course we meet an interesting vampire. To this point we thought they were evil, but the beats of this plays out about the vampire society. Like, think about that. Vampire society. Marvel kind of has been doing that too through the Jason Aaron Avengers run. What does that look like? What is their industrial society like? What is their community like? What's it mean to go home at night as a vampire, or at home during the day as a vampire, right? So this has a lot to say about that. And it really shows that Wind and everything that he's been through and realizing how different he is gives him a deep well of like emotional intelligence and empathy that he can relate to people, even people who are trying to kill him. And it's not like this whole book is about him being lovey-dovey. I mean, it's actually mostly a fight, and I just don't want to show you the fight because it's such a big spoiler. But like, it never has to be said that he's got emotional intelligence. The whole point is that the reason he's going to heal the world is partially because he actually has learned from what he's been through, and he has changed, and so he wants to change the world. I love this comic book. I think it's perfect. I don't think it's ever had a bad issue. I think the art is always stunning. I didn't call out the lettering at the beginning, but it's lettered by Andworld Design, although Michael Dalinas actually does a lot of his own lettering effects, and he's credited. So that toof on that page is him doing his own lettering effects. I don't think you need a kid in your life to love this. I think it's just an amazing book. And something in the last series that I didn't give it the highlight here is that they meet this giant, and he talks them through the creation myth, like what he thinks is the reason that the world is the way that it is, and the reason that there's vampires and fairies and things. And it was just such an interesting creation myth. It actually reminded me a lot, again, this is coming up a few times today, of Avatar: The Last Airbender. And yeah, it's won Eisner Awards, and it's absolutely won my heart. I started reading it with Kid Krisis when it first came out in 2020, and at that time it was a little bit heavy for her. Now it's perfect for her. So I think it's probably, you could probably hand it to a kid around 8, and it's still going to be heavy, and it's still going to have scary stuff, but I think its strike zone is probably for kids 8 to 13. I think teenagers would like it too, but I think it's like just scary enough. Little kids like to be scared like a little bit by fiction, and I think it's just scary enough for an 8-year-old. Okay, finally, I think this is our last book that I actually read, although there's a couple more after this. It's X-Men by Ryan Stegman, on art from Jed MacKay, writing and colors from First Fuentes Sujo, and letters from Clayton Cowles. Here's the thing. I think Jed MacKay has so many interesting things to do with these characters. This scene, Quentin Quire, and figuring out how he's been surviving in the background of this whole time, loved. There's an amazing all-time Cyclops moment in here, where he is talking about that, he's not supposed to be the scariest X-Men. Being the leader is not about being the biggest and the scariest. It's about being a leader. And Jed MacKay, I think, writes a very good Cyclops. I think our Cyclops is in very, very good hands. And also, this is a great page. But what a great page. And I don't always like Ryan Stegman. I'm just staring at it like it's such a great page. But I am so bored by this bad guy plot. I just think that it introduced too many other mutants at once. There's this whole team of them, and I said this last issue too, but like I kind of forgotten that I said that because I'm a goldfish and I have ADHD. And I was reading this again, and I started making the same notes, like there are just so many characters. I can't figure out how to care about them all. I just wish we could focus on a couple of them, which is not, I just don't think there's enough page space to introduce a whole team of like 5 bad guys and like remind us, and then it doesn't even have their names on the recap page, so it's hard to remember what their powers are or why they're on the team. It's just this whole plot about the 3K and Cassandra Nova, it's just putting me to sleep. But Jed MacKay writes good X-Men, and he writes the mutants well, and I like that he's writing a weird assortment of characters, and that's what's keeping me coming back right now. It's certainly not Ryan Stegman's art in general, although I do think he did a really good job on this issue. And it's certainly not this plot with the 3K. Then Zenescope had a 20th anniversary cover gallery. I didn't get that because it's just covers. And, for a gag, I was going to read like 20 issues of Zombie Tramp and like recap Zombie Tramp for you the way I recapped Wind and Farmhand and Kaya. But then I read this first issue, which is free. If you have Comixology Unlimited on Amazon, you don't want to hear me talk about Zombie Tramp. It's called Zombie Tramp. It's a titty book with 2 Ds, double Ds as the case might be. And I'm pretty sure we don't need to cover it. But I'm happy it's back because it was part of Action Lab's Danger Zone, something zone. And Action Lab went under and they stole a lot of IP and a lot of money from all their creators. And so I really, really like creators getting their books back and being able to continue them. So even though this is not a book I would love, I absolutely support that it exists. And I think this issue, like 59, like it's been around for a while. It's been around since I think 2010. I'm just so happy that Dan Mendoza was able to bring it back. And I'm happy for the fans of it in the market who are able to get it again. It gives me hope that we will be able to finally see the very end of Princeless by Jeremy Whitley, which is a comic I adore and which I would love to have an omnibus all together of because I think it's one of the great kids comics of the past 25 years and it is stuck in all of that Action Lab IP control. So I hope Jeremy Whitley gets it back. And folks, so glad we made it. Look how far we've come now, baby. It felt like it took a lifetime because there were so many fucking comic books this week. Okay, so I'm going to put my glasses on. We're just going to cover a couple comics and then comments. Finally, you get to drink. You've been alcohol-free this entire time, but I finally made a mistake and you finally get to drink. So I'm going to just scroll up to where I kind of remember that we left off, and then I'm going to scroll down to the bottom, and when I get to the bottom, that is the end of the show. James Abel says, tomorrow, July 7th, is Final Fantasy IX's 25th anniversary. Maybe that's why they're all on sale. I don't know. I've played, originally, 1, 4, which we know is 2, 3, which so and then this year when we got a Switch, I played for the first time Japan 2 and Japan 3. I've never played Japan 5, and I've never played 8, 9, and 10. 11 was online. So I have them all on Switch now, and maybe when I'm all caught up, I will have time. But it sounds like based on last week, I would need to get takeout to have enough time to play more video games. So anyway, okay. Logan Wayne says, remember when Kim Kardashian decided to chastise ordinary women for not getting off their ass and working for what they want because she was able to? People had to remind her how privileged she is. And that's the thing. We've all got some kind of privilege. I mean, even those of us who are doing it really rough, which I don't happen to be right now, and I'm extremely thankful for that. You know, everybody's got a little something that they've got, whether it's some aspect of their identity or some aspect of their upbringing or education. And we always have to remember when we're trying to say to somebody, it's so easy, or why don't you just do it? Like, I've often felt, you know, here's, if I can be real, some real crisis lore. Reddit has turned into a search engine. I feel like people have given up on Google, and they either just ask a question on Reddit and assume the crowd will answer them, or they ask ChatGPT, which is insane. It's not a search engine. It doesn't know anything. It only can predict what you want to hear. And I get so angry sometimes because I'm in like the omnibus Reddit, I'm in graphic novels Reddit, I'm on Drag Race. I like Reddit. I've been on Reddit for almost 20 years. I enjoy Reddit. I think you can fine tune your own experience and not have the worst of Reddit. And I get so frustrated when sometimes people are like, what's Saga about? I'm like, why are you asking Reddit? But then I remember, like, not everybody had the time to buy these comic books. Not everybody was that age. Not everybody got brought up with people who told them comic books were literature and let them read comic books as if it was literature. People are asking these questions because they want to know. And sometimes sometimes it's been so long since I started my site, and it was really a site for people who were literally on their first day of how do I find the X-Men issue I want, that I do sometimes forget what that life was like. And that's partially the privilege of having been alive for the past 15 years and working on my website and taking for granted that I know all this stuff about comics now. And I've been here for all these series coming out like Saga. And I have to sometimes be like, the person you are and the reason that you're here on the internet doing this is because you do want to help people with these questions. But sometimes Reddit really does test my patience. Quincognito coming in, Cash, Beatles, and Prince. I cannot possibly choose between Prince and Michael Jackson. So I'm not going to come down on either side of that. Logan Wayne saying I'm a basic bitch for Billie Jean, my favorite song and Thriller, favorite album for Prince, When Doves Cry and Purple Rain. You know what? It's nothing's basic when you album's that classic. Thriller is like, oh my gosh, how many classic songs? People don't even realize. Just listen to the running order of Thriller. I mean, there's one non-single on it. Yeah, love. Superdrop loves the Batman sound. Bat dance, shut the funk up. Yeah, so many great songs on that. Lorena saying hi. Have I read Fables? No, I've never read Fables. I think I read the first issue at some point because I have this huge list. Sometimes I should just bring it on screen and show you of like all of the significant runs I've never read. Fables, Akira. Now we're gonna put The Sixth Gun on there. Hellboy, all these things that I've never run. I have this huge list that I always keep adding to when I find new things. Grendel, which I have here in the room with me, and I actually have read some of Grendel. And that's just on my list, and I read one issue, but like, it's, you know, only so much time in life. But I really would like to read more. Fables, okay, what a pitch. Who knows? I pitched some things really hard. So here's a question that you could answer real quick if you're one of the people still in the stream. Do you like the way I did the catch-up mechanic this time? I will say there's not many books I have left to catch up on. Those are the 3 that I've really been lagging on, especially KO, which I've been like, I'm saving it. But I am going to have to catch up. Where is it? It's on Lazarus, because the new final series of Lazarus is about to come out. So I have to break the plastic on this and read Lazarus Volume 4, which I've never read before. So I am going to have to do a catch up on Lazarus. Did you like that format? Did you like me kind of like doing 1 minute of what the series is about, 1 minute of recent issues, and or were you like, oh my gosh, Krisis, like that's 3 whole minutes. The whole point is move the show along. Let me know. Lance McNair just really learned the true meaning of Bruce Springsteen's Born in the USA. Amazing how widely misunderstood, especially since the 4th of July just passed. Yeah, people just hear the chorus and they do not realize that there is so much secret nuance in the background there. Cruel Angel talking about Laura Wolverine. Now that Buffy, Laura, has rejected her perfect world of having her entire family together and not ever being a Slayer, Wolverine, can we finally get back to good stories? Wow, Cruel Angel just laying it out there, but I totally agree. I watched a Christopher Priest interview with Rock and Robbie earlier this week, and he explained that his approach to Vampirella and now Red Sonja, it's the same as it was for his original Black Panther run, which is editors giving him carte blanche to write the character how he wants with no interference. Well, I think somebody's got to do some pass interference on Chris Christopher Priest, because and Jamie making a great point. I think a lot of people aren't familiar with Priest's work or as Black Panther. If they had been, I think there'd be less negativity. Yeah, I think, again, I don't want to give away that final page where people haven't read it, but I think people got to that final page and they were so cynical, and the racial politics of it were so weird, and they're like, oh, this is messed up. But like, Christopher Priest has always played in that lane, and like, if they don't know who Christopher Priest is and they're just coming to the concept again, we have to have patience and empathy for people who aren't in the inn like us. People who aren't aware of Christopher Priest and they're just reading it because they saw like Joe Quesada's name or they've seen the Black Panther movie. Yeah, that last page was really going to tweak the hell out of them, but you have to understand the madman that is Christopher Priest there. Okay, then all of you being surprised about how much I hated The Moon is Following Us. Then talking about our brilliant ruin or our desecrated ruin, some kind of ruin. I forgot what the name of it is. I want this game comic to be good. I don't think I'll get this. Here's the thing. I am still interested in the game. I just think it was trying to serve 3 different masters. It was trying to advertise the game and be a good mystery and be like a horror comic. And I just think, honestly, we got 1 issue of each. The first issue kind of advertised the game, but not enough. The second issue was a very good mystery. The third issue was an okay horror comic. And it felt very disparate. It didn't feel like they were linked up. Lance McNair, I feel like comics about marginalized groups of people often do fall into the trap of making every struggle about part of them. Yeah, and it's hard because you want to do something universal, and since the marginalized group has faced the struggle, it becomes, I think, really tempting to want to just be like, ooh, we're going to make this whole book about this marginalized group about being marginalized. But it's like, show some dimension. And that's the reason I really like Wind. At the beginning, when it started to be revealed how many of the characters were queer, I was like, oh boy, this is going to be about their parents not accepting them for their queerness. And like, I just was like, my guard was up. And then as it continued, I'm like, oh no, actually we're playing their queerness as totally cool, but we're doing all that lack of acceptance with the magic part. And I was like, oh, so clever. So like, I just wish more books would be that clever. Okay. A lot of people are talking about movies, movie theaters, Superman. Some people apparently saw Jurassic Park. And then also, yeah, somehow you guys also landed on that same beat I landed on, and people this is about that issue. But it also kind of goes with my whole, like, ask ChatGPT the question. Some people don't want to do any research for themselves. They just want to react and get their takes off. And I always want to, sometimes when I watch these back and you see me scream and shout about an issue, but I didn't tell you how we got there or like why I'm screaming and shouting. I'm like, that's fun. And I know you like when I do the and the screaming and shouting, but I always want to give you context of how we got there, because if you don't trust my opinion, or at least if you don't have your opinion calibrated to my opinion, then the screaming and shouting like doesn't matter. And that's why I just get a little annoyed when people are like, oh, it's Krisis with their hot takes. I'm like, they're not hot takes, because I'm on here every week explaining where these takes come from. They could not be more cold. My takes are very consistent. And so that's why I don't really like that. This one flyaway is driving me crazy. ADHD. That's why the hot take culture I don't really get. Like, what currency? Why are people going on Twitter and being like, this comic had a terrible last page? Well, A, you're advertising the comic, so great. And B, what are you getting from that? As somebody who is like in this online space and who does make money from it in some ways, what did you get from the 1,000 likes and saying that last page was bad? You're not creating anything, and nobody knows if they can trust your taste or your hot take because you haven't given them any reason why you found it was so bad. It just really drives me crazy. Really, really drives me crazy. Okay. Maybe it's the computer. Yeah, the computer makes a consistent like sound at all times. So yeah, we gotta the ports, it's like whack-a-mole trying to get these plugged into what ports are gonna work. I have the money saved up almost. I probably could buy a new computer right now, but I just want to step into the new chips so that it'll last longer. You know, Macs in my experience have like 4 years where they're beautiful and wonderful if you buy close to the top of the line, and then they'll keep working for like another 3 years pretty well. But like, you get 4 years of like, this is a great computer, and I'm at year 5 right now, and so I don't want to jump in now when if I just wait 84 days, 87 days, then I could like have another year of that life, right? Okay. So much cool crosstalk, and you know I love being a host to that. Kane saying, if people from the Middle Ages experienced our world as it is, they'd think everything we do is the work of magic and gods. Yeah, and I love talking about how mythology is often the explanation of science in a world that did not necessarily understand science. James the Medium Answer cannot stand Secret Six, but likes the writer. She can draw up drama between characters pretty well. Yeah, I've never read Gail Simone's Secret Six, so I have no history with Secret Six whatsoever. I just think that Nicole, what's her name? One of them's Dixie Chicks, the Chicks. That's Nicole Maines. Natalie Maines. Anyway, I think I think she's better than just a writer of Dreamer, is where I'm coming in on this. Jeremy saying hi, can't stick around, but will watch it later. Super Drop saying OG Savage Sword of Conan is one of those things that's on my to-do list. When I get to that, I'll probably get to the Solomon Kane run too. And Jamie C47 loved the interrogation stuff in Storm once again. Wasn't a fan, which is essentially a power scaling stuff at the end. Yeah, very similar to me. Although Ellen, I loved when She-Hulk was like, and I'm her lawyer. That was fun. So sometimes Aodell's comedy works for me. One Wheel Track saying, I really enjoyed the issue, still talking about Storm. While the book felt a little overstuffed with all the plots from the Rumble to Storm in jail to the FBI in Limbo, I would love to see the plot come back again in Magic, but I don't blame Aodell in the current climate where the books don't get past 10. It's very excited for Thunder War starting next issue. Yeah, in this climate where everything just disappears after 10 issue, I mean, swing for the fences every time. JVC47, as usual, saying the thing that I said, but much more succinctly. Ultimate Wolverine number 6, pretty much a complete retread of the narrative device of issue number 4, and now we're at a point where it's completely just another normal Wolverine story. I saw a lot of people saying that online of like, there's nothing special left about this. Like, you're just doing Wolverine that we've already seen 100 times as Wolverine, so like why is it even Ultimate Wolverine? It's just Wolverine. So then we have Dark Phoenix 74 saying Storm is one of my favorite characters, but I do not like this Storm book much. It's just so devoid of Storm, as Aodell introduces concept after concept and introduces his own canon of cosmic power wanking. Yeah, I agree. I guess the one part where I depart from you is when he focuses on Storm, I think he gets Storm extraordinarily well. I really, really like his actual Storm, but I do agree with all of you that like the power stuff, you know, sometimes you got to swing big, and I think he understands at an intrinsic level. A lot of Storm fans love the power scaling stuff. A lot of Storm fans want Storm to be more powerful than Jean, and I do think that he's playing with that very deliberately. It's just not as much for me. Okay. From last week's stream, you picked up the Trident of Ariella. It's going to arrive in the mail this week. I see mermaids. I'm happy. Ooh, Kane. Fun fact. That's in next week's poll as well, or at least the next catch-up I have to do. And I realized that I do have a review copy of the original series from BattleQuest Comics. So I will do a catch-up on the original series and tell you what I think. And if it seems like something that we're really going to like and everybody's interested in, I will get back in touch with them and see if we can get comps of the current series. Also, I just didn't have time for today, which is a shame because it would have helped for today, but I did get a comp from a different comic company that you all know. And I'm really excited to get to talk about them in the future, possibly the week ahead of them coming out, which would be very different for this. And then if I say something bad, maybe I'll get taken off the comps list. I don't know, but we'll see. And that's coming in a matter of weeks. Super Top, I read The Woods back when it was first coming out, like before anybody knew who this James Tynion guy was and what he was about. And it was fine. It was cool. But it just kind of was like, okay, like a bunch of kids, they get like a whole bus of them gets transported to an alternate world where there's like scary monsters in the woods and they're just getting picked off. It just felt very of a certain kind of media that was happening in that time in the early 2010s. Like it felt very derivative of Lost. It felt very derivative of Walking Dead. It just felt like a kid version of a lot of tropes that were very popular at that time. Now I think I could probably go back now that I'm further away from it and probably appreciate it a lot more. And I think I have the first 3 or 4 trades downstairs somewhere, but I also think there is a compendium of it. Now we're into comments on my comments. Reddit is a reflection of humanity. Always confused, always conflicted, always asking, always telling. I try to bring my love and positivity to Reddit as much as possible. And hey, we had somebody on the stream who knows me from Reddit, so maybe I'm doing a good job. But yeah, I really, really try to. Lansing Thriller is insane when you look at how many classics are on it. Agreed. And also shout out to Billy Ocean, another 80s classic. Grendel's so good. I've got all of Grendel right here. It's just, I'm a slow reader in physical. As fast as I am in digital, on physical, partially because it's small and I'm going increasingly blind, I'm just much slower. But I actually read a fair amount of Grendel and was really digging it. Plus, new Grendel is really cool, and old Grendel is so different. And I'm just so interested in this idea of like, yeah, he started as this like cool assassin, and now we're in space, and he's like Agent Venom in space. I'm just so interested in looking at the drift of that. Kane loves Fables, one of the best comics I've read. The video game, The Wolf Among Us, got me to read Fables. People liked the catch-up format. Liked it. Cool. Okay, so then we will keep doing it. And We made it to the bottom, baby. No songs today. I'm not doing any songs until I'm all caught up because honestly, the time that I used to rehearse the songs, I currently need to read the comics. So, be ready on Tuesday night, Eastern Standard Time, to catch me on Omnidog's Vault, where we're going to be jamming with comics with Freddie. If you want to participate in the game that we may or may not be playing, bring 3 of your favorite things. Could be comics, could be albums, could just be cheeses. I don't know, but you're going to ask us to F, marry, or kill your favorite things, and we will give you our pronouncements live on stream. There may be a Marvel stream on Near Mint Condition this week. I may or may not be on it, but if you don't have notifications turned on, there are going to be 1, maybe 2 catch-up streams this week because I need to get through all these comics because after that, I want to have my amazing stream that I planned, One Wheelchair X. I want to do my top comics of the first half of 2025 so you can see past my top 12. And I have a haul around the world because I have a huge haul of comics right off the left, a huge box arriving any day that's got even more comic books in it that's going to let me give a teaser for something I'm going to be doing a little bit later this summer. So please, if you want to see that kind of stuff and you don't just want to watch it after it shows up, hit the notification bell. You know I do not abuse that privilege, and you can tell me if I start abusing it. So I might see you maybe as soon as tomorrow. I don't know. So until then, it's a crazy world. It's incredibly hot in the top half of the world where all of you are, and there are just absolutely wild, unpredictable things happening every day. Stay safe. Be kind. Try to treat other people, even the people who don't know anything on Reddit, with the amount of kindness that you would want to be treated with. Because you know what? That's all we've got. In the end, when we're dead and buried and we've got all these books and everything, the thing that I truly believe is going to last in the world longest is probably the way we made other people feel. So let's try to make everybody feel good and accepted. And let's remember that human rights are for everybody. Feminism is human rights. Trans rights are human rights. Rights for black people and indigenous people and people of color are human rights. And let's give them all the rights and treat them like the awesome people they are and deserve to be. Until I see you again, which might be very, very soon, please, out there in the world, don't have a crisis. Unless, of course, it's me.